Hello and welcome. This is for the final sort of group of factions doing the Dwarves and the Vampire Coast today. The two gunpowder factions. We're going to be covering with the Dwarves, starting with their lords. Starting with the Basic Lord.
The Basic Lord.
There ain't a lot else to say about him. He comes with a perfect vigor item, so long as his leadership is above 50%.
Which is going to happen most of the time because he has 75 leadership.
Yeah, dwarves all have quite high leadership, so don't need to worry about reaching that threshold too often. He also provides -9 melee attack to everything in range, which, when you've got that high melee defense of dwarves, could come in handy. Because it just makes it even lower, that battle of attrition.
Slap him. You could probably slap him in a blob and be fine.
Yeah, but he is kind of outclassed by the other sort of legendary options that there are.
100% he's outclassed. 50, 60 isn't bad melee stats for just a lord that sits and doesn't die.
Doesn't do anything, yeah, but it's just compared to the other ones, he's not much to really look at. It comes with the usual stand your ground and foe seeker, but
if they want a cheaper version of one of the lords, they could just grab him, slap him in the middle of like a bunch of hammers, and then
yeah, you can get him down to 900, but I think you can get a rune lord cheaper than that. So
yeah,
and if you look at a rune lord, if you take all the runes off, you can get him down to 850. So
yeah, but the rune lord doesn't have as good of
stats now.
So that's the thing.
Looking at an upgraded version, basically, of the Lord, it will be a short. So looking at the upgraded version of the Lord is basically Belagar Ironhammer. Basically just a much better version of the regular Lord. His item, I forget what his item does. Yeah, it gives him a little bit of extra melee damage and an extra 9 melee attack, so long as his leadership is again above that threshold, which we shouldn't really need to worry about to begin with.
Yeah, oh man, 69 melee attack.
It does give expert charge defense, which if timed correctly can be pretty helpful compared to the stand your ground on the basic lord. And he also has a self buff which greatly increases his damage by giving him 100 melee attack.
I don't think I've ever seen expert charge defense on a unit.
Expert charge defense, by the way, guys, means that you will also have charge defense against small foes.
Yeah, like it's basically charge defense against all
models. Which is pretty useless because infantry-sized models doesn't have a lot of charge bonus normally. Yeah. There was one exception, Bestigor Herd?
Bestigor Herd, or maybe Forsaken.
Yeah.
You know,
I think Forsaken was it, yeah.
Don't do high, like, they don't have armor piercing anyways, so it's kind of redundant.
It's dwarves.
Like, why you need it? Like...
Why do I want this? I don't.
Why do I want this? You could... The only reason you take it is just for the +24 defense. It's like they toss
basically
it in
stand your ground. Because. Yeah, it's basically just a replacement for stand your ground instead of the leadership, which dwarves already have a huge amount.
No, they split stand your ground into two different things. That, and then they have the leadership thing beside it.
Yeah, the leadership's still there, so you don't need the leadership buffs as dwarves. You just need this.
You can just turn that off and just
consistently.
You save yourself a little money, I guess.
72 gold you save yourself. So.
Yeah. Belagar is considered pretty bad legendary lord.
Yeah, definitely an upgrade from the basic lord, but not that good.
Yeah, now, you might as well just bring the basic lord with take off some of the abilities, and it's still cheaper.
A pretty good utility lord is the rune lord.
He has runes.
He's basically a caster, but he does have 120 armor, so he's not going to die as quickly as your usual caster is. You can put him on his chair, which gives him physical resistance as well as extra. It provides map-wide magic resistance. I forget what else it does. Does something else.
15%. Now take that into account on top of the 25% dwarves already get. So it's a 40% magic resist across the entire dwarven army.
Yeah, which is a huge amount.
If you have allies that also benefit from the
yeah, so if you're doing like a 3v3 or a 2v2, it could definitely be a good idea to bring the old rune lord on a chair.
Yeah.
His runes of going as followed: Forge Fire, Rune of Hearth. These two not coming into a huge amount of effect. This one is a really small amount of damage, and this one gives immunity to psychology to a faction that is already really high leadership. So you don't really need that too much.
The only reason you might want to use it is if you're afraid of stuff getting terror routed. Like, because dwarves can get terror routed.
Yeah, but only like the worst units, like dwarf warriors, basically.
I've caused longbeards to terror route too, but
no, they're immune to psychology. Longbeards are immune to psychology.
Oh yeah, fucking. I hate longbeards.
Maybe minus, but
yeah, but if you don't really care if your miners are terror routing particularly.
Yeah, or dwarf warriors.
But if your dwarf warriors are, they're only 415. It's not too much.
Oh yeah, I forgot. That's 700 gold unit. That is also
amazing. We'll get onto it. We'll get onto it.
You have your time to
looking at the other runes, Wrath of Oath Steel, I mean, it's extra 60 armor, which is really good, but your affectionate's already so armored that it's likely the entire enemy army has armor piercing already, so an extra 60 armor isn't going to help you out much. Yeah, again, if you have allies that aren't armored, then maybe it's worth bringing, but...
Or Slayers.
Yeah, or we could give it to Slayers, yeah, but again, it's likely that if you're playing against Dwarves, you're going to bring a lot of armor piercing, so you're just giving them some armor to actually pierce through for the Slayers. They have also Wrath of Ruin, which is probably the best rune of the bunch, due to the fact that the Dwarves are incredibly slow. This allows them to actually catch up to things, and it basically functions as a net for things you want to shoot. It can work on flying units as well, so just pretty much any unit that you want to shoot, you put this on it, and it's not going to go anywhere.
You only get 3.
You only get 3 charges. You can bring a weakened version of it on the Runesmith. It does last 30 seconds, though, which is a really long time, especially for a net type effect, which is what it basically is.
Any cavalry unit that gets close enough to your formation, you pop that, and you can effectively kill it long before it escapes.
Yeah, the value of being able to decrease speed as Dwarves is really helpful, because they just can't catch anything otherwise. The final one, a Master Rune of Negation, is an extra 44% damage resist. If you're going for a lot tighter of a formation as Dwarves, I would definitely recommend bringing this, because it's nearly 50% damage resistance for 18 seconds, which is a huge amount, especially if you stack that on top of like the physical resistance that you already get, or the magic resistance.
From the armor.
It basically means that you hit cap of magic resistance on the Rune Lord. So you literally take no magic resistance if you're popping this on himself.
It's also unlimited charges.
Yeah. Although it does have a 120-second recharge.
Yeah. Huge basically reload time, but like without any charges.
Yeah,
so
basically
long fights most usually is just pure gold mine.
Yeah, these 2 runes are basically the 2 that are worth taking in most situations. The other ones are not that good in most situations, particularly.
Or bizarrely situational.
Yeah, not to mention they're rather expensive. Like this one only gives 12% extra armor piercing damage, but it costs like a full 143 gold.
Like the only reason
that's really not worth it.
Like if you're slapping it on an artillery piece or something.
Yeah, but even though it's weapon damage, so it wouldn't even be ranged weapon damage.
Oh yeah, it wouldn't be ranged. So like, because 12% isn't really that much. Like,
yeah, and it only affects armor piercing as well. So you put it on your Longbeards with great weapons?
Or do you put it on yourself?
Yeah, I guess you put it on like but seeing as you're bringing the Rune Lord, it's going to be Gotrek. You put it on Gotrek.
Yeah.
But it affects it in range, so it's meant to affect multiple people. Yeah, it's not that good.
Yeah, it's not very good.
I'd really recommend these 2. His items, this one is pretty handy if you're facing like Wood Elves or some sort of expecting to get a lot of basically skirmished, because 20% missile resistance to everything in range is really good. It basically gives them like another layer of shield. And the Gatekeeper's Belt is it only activates when he's below 20% health, and since there's no healing for Dwarves, if you're reaching that low of a health, you're pretty in trouble by that point.
Yeah, you're already in trouble, but I guess if you really feel scared at losing your Lord that hard...
If you have 216 gold laying around, then go for it.
Yeah.
But that's the general kit that I'd recommend. Whether or not you bring him on his chair or not is just situational on whether or not you want him as a big missile target or not. Bring him on foot. We're seeing as now foot lords get knocked over a lot more. It might just be better.
If he is a large missile target, most of the dwarf units can outshoot most of what would shoot him.
He does get some stat changes. He gets an extra 7 melee defense. Actually, if I click it this way, there you go. So he loses a little bit of speed, but gains like nearly an extra 1,000 health, 10 more leadership, 7 more melee defense, and just 2 more charge bonuses. Just like it's probably worth most of the time bringing him on the Anvil of Doom.
Yeah,
and also it's a mount on for dwarves. That's funny to look at.
Yeah. Also a large target, which normally
nobody would ever expect that. It's a large target. Not going to run into any halberd problems probably, so you should be fine. Moving on to Ungrim Iron Fist. He's your typical giant anti-large great axe infantry. He's got a lot of damage, he hits really hard, but he dies pretty quick, even for a dwarf. Especially when one of his abilities reduces his melee defense by 24, he can die surprisingly quickly, even with that 120 armor. Although he is unbreakable, which means that no matter how low he has health to get, he's not going to suffer from leadership penalties anytime.
Yeah. But you throw him into pretty much any other lord, and he tends to murder them instantly.
Yeah, because he has just huge amounts of damage, especially when you put his item on. He just has huge damage output. Activate Red Ruin, activate like Deadly Onslaught, and he has Death Blow activated when he's on low health. it's a huge amount of damage. He's not very good at cleaving through infantry because of course he's anti-large, but against in any one-on-one fight against like a single entity of any kind, he'll almost certain to win. But dwarves don't really struggle with that too much because of the amount of guns they have. So
they can just bring any large down. So bringing Ungrim
isn't too helpful.
Or, unless you're memeing or something.
Yeah, not to mention that if you're bringing Ungrim, then you can't bring the Rune Lord, which means you can't slow the thing down that you're trying to catch, and he is pretty slow at 32 speed, so he's probably not going to catch any other single entity. So he's never going to really find those ideal situations that he wants to fight in, and even if he does, he's not going to reach them in time. So he's just not that good of a Lord, compared to, especially, the next guy, Grombrindle, who is basically the same Ungrim versus Sigvald. Yeah, I'd say Ungrim wins. Just because Ungrim has so much armor, and Sigvald doesn't have armor piercing.
Well, and also, here's the thing: he's armor piercing and just does obscene levels of damage. Because
like the regen isn't going to kick in before he kills him.
Regeneration is really powerful over time, but if you're getting hit in bursts, you'll die immediately. That's why, especially for newer players, they'll not understand that your regen lord can't survive someone like Archaon or Grimgor finally catching your sorry ass and beating you into the ground.
But he's just not the greatest, especially because looking at the next lord, Grombrindle, he's a very similar sort of deal as him, with the high melee attack. He also has a magic damage attack, which can sometimes come in handy, surprisingly, because it's one of the few ways dwarves can get access to it. But he's basically Ungrim, but he gets the Flash Bomb, which is one of the main selling points that he has, because it is, again, a slow. A slow for dwarves is a really, really strong ability.
And minus 24
and which basically means he's guaranteed to hit anything that gets caught by. Which, if you're dealing with like chariots or something that just gets close to him, all it needs to do is get within 30-meter range, and that probably means he's going to be able to catch it. Which definitely helps a lot more compared to Ungrim. He can also provide one charge 24 melee defense and unbreakable, which it's a bound ability, so you can't get rid of it. But it's pretty good. It's basically overpowered stand or die, but only gets one charge. And so it definitely can come in handy sometimes.
You want your units to pretty much survive.
Yeah, like if you've got like some dwarf warriors that are holding, or like some lower leadership dwarf unit that you want to make full advantage of, or see crumble to the dust, then that's a good thing to pop it on. Plus, an extra 24 melee defense is always helpful.
Yep.
His items, though, I don't think are too great. Like the rune axe only gives him an extra 50% armor piercing. It does give Discourage, though, which is nice. Yeah, Discourage can be nice. But
I'd probably take that. Like, if I wanted to get the most out of him, I guess, as a combatant, because, especially against low leadership factions, that can actually be really
It could do, yeah. It depends if he can...
16 is a lot.
200 gold, I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, and if you have Discourage on, like, a really slow-moving target like Grombrindle, it's hard for you to, like, go around the place, make full advantage of that. That's why terror routes are usually on, like, fast units, because you want to get through and do that as much place as possible.
I'm thinking more of just breaking the front line.
Yeah, like throwing it into, like, one... You can probably, like, break, like, an extra unit at a time, but it really depends on where he is, and then he has to get tired fighting the chaff instead. It's probably not 100% worth it. And his other item, giving...
The main thing is the 50% armor piercing, because most of his damage is
already armor piercing. So it definitely does increase his damage by like a good 150 or so.
Yeah, so it's 350, so yeah, 150, so... He does a good over 600 damage.
Yeah, he already has a big flat 500 there with his his other item as well. Is extra 12 leadership. Again, that's like dwarves don't need more leadership. There's no really reason why you need that.
Yeah.
Even if it is constant around him.
The axe I feel is arguable that you could probably bring it, but in most cases you probably won't unless you're expecting either a low leadership faction or you just need more damage, or you just want more damage from him.
Yeah, there was in terms of all these leadership buffs, and as well as the immune to psychology with the Rune Lord, there was basically only one exception in the entire dwarf roster of something that you want to have leadership, and it's Felix. If you're bringing Felix, then you want to like bring that immunity psychology, and you want to bring that leadership to keep him around, to make sure, because he has loaded leadership relative to dwarf leadership, and he's not immune to psychology, and he's a really expensive thing. So in terms of like making use of immunity psychology buffs and leadership buffs, which is the biggest part of him. You'll typically see Grombrindle paired with Felix, and if you do that pairing, then you want to bring a Rune Helm of Stuff Bar so he sticks around. Or if you bring a Rune Lord as well as the Felix, then you want to bring that immunity psychology rune so that he sticks around. The last Lord option, King of the Dwarves himself, Thorgrim Grudgebearer, one you really do not see much. Probably for good reason, because he's not great.
High King.
He has a really weird assassin ability that only gives minus 24 melee defense to a single unit. He's your typical stand your ground and foe seeker.
Isn't it a unit in general, so you can use it on like infantry?
You can use it on anything.
Yeah, so
but it's a
probably
strange old ability.
It's strange, but it's 60 seconds. It's 60 seconds for
44 seconds.
Well, 44. I mean the
duration,
has a downtime of 16 seconds. That's
which is pretty decent.
Like
fair, so.
I wouldn't call Oath of Vengeance a bad ability.
No, it's a weird one. There's nothing else like it, but it is pretty good.
Think of it this way: it allows dwarf warriors to actually win their front line.
Yeah, because actually that low melee attack ability they have actually doesn't happen too much. They also has the same ability that Leon Kerr has, where whenever if he gets health lower than 50%, he provides a map-wide buff to his boys. Immunity psychology again, not too helpful unless you're bringing Felix. Plus 8 melee attack is pretty good for your entire army, but again, it's like relying on Thorgrim to reach his health cap, to reach 50% of his health.
It relies on you losing hard enough that you need to use it.
Yeah, which isn't the best. It's another reason why most people drop it off Leon Kerr as well. So.
Thorgrim though has like 5,700 health.
Yeah, that's a lot of health to get through as well in the first place.
Yeah, so I think he kind of is the only lord that can kind of get away with that sort of ability because he has a lot of health to drain.
Yeah, he'll still have a lot of health left after that half, but again, you don't want to be putting him into situations where he reaches that low health.
Down to that health limit as well.
So yeah, he has to be put down to that limit, but it's at least that like you could probably drop the ability. How much is it?
152.
Yeah, 100. You could probably drop it for like another, Dwarf Warriors or something. But you could have it on, and then if he survives long enough, or just I don't know, like the rest of your army is still kicking around.
Yeah, his item, the Great Book, gives a constant 9 melee attack to everything in range, which
is good.
It is good, but it's not really the dwarf style of play. The dwarf style of play is attrition out the enemy as long as possible. It is a nice constant, and it does have a big 55-meter range. So it could be helpful again in those box situations that you're forming a dwarf box, sort of tight box formation. But then Rune Lord I'd probably take the rune of 44% damage resistance over the Great Book, even though that's constant and this only lasts like 18 seconds.
Yeah, because I think the reverse idea is the fact that like the High King just makes it so that you can actually actually have your infantry beat your opponent rather than sitting and watching them die. Because the main problem with facing most armor-piercing infantry is the fact that the dwarves lack the melee attack to kill the armor-piercing infantry
before they kill them.
That's a threat to them.
Yeah.
That's usually the big problem that they have, because they can kind of kill them, but they'll never kill them fast enough.
No.
Where, like, let's say Marauders have great weapons. If you give the dwarf warriors like 9 extra melee attack, then they'll kill them.
They'll shoot through a lot quicker. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'd say probably in terms of Dwarf Lords, I'd say Grumbrindle and the Rune Lord are the two ones. The Rune Lord is just such an amazing utility tool, and Grumbrindle has the utility as well as some really good damage output with his stats. Also, he's unbreakable, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
Moving on to heroes, we have the Thane. He's
a dude.
Yeah, he's your run-of-the-mill. He's like
bro.
an Empire captain, but he's got 120 armor.
Yeah.
And better stats. He's your typical sort of basic melee hero. His items, none of them I don't think stick out too particularly.
He does have the minus 18%
speed to a constant, which is something, maybe?
Yeah, like if you pop it on himself, like it...
Don't know if it stacks with two of them. I'd assume it stacks with other speed debuffs. I know it wouldn't stack very well, probably.
It stacks with other speed debuffs, like maybe if you have a Rune Lord, I guess.
Yeah.
And you're using the slow.
It's hard to say how much of an effect that would have on things.
It might... But what about infantry units?
Yeah, that wouldn't. I mean, 18% of like 30 is like.
18% of 30 is not a lot.
No,
but also
that's like 6.
Taking in, like, it also helps deal with charge bonuses a bit.
Yeah, it could hamper that down a little bit, but.
Yeah, that's the only thing I could probably think of is like, what, 161 gold.
He also gets Silver Horn of Vengeance, which is an extra 12 charge bonus to allies in range. Which is amusing. It's something.
Just like, let's get him, boys.
See, that's a lot of charge bonus. 30 charge bonus on the Thane.
Yeah,
Extra 42 there. That's 42 charge bonus. And Thane secretly a chariot unit.
12. 12 or 12%?
12, full
It's
12. It's a flat 12.
Flat
Yeah, that's
12.
actually a huge bonus.
Yeah, that's
but,
really good.
Well,
that's actually a huge bonus.
Yeah, that's
but
really good,
still
but it's on
useless.
dwarves, so it's not as good.
Yeah.
like I guess if you're mixing them in, just it runs them ahead of the cavalry. Come on.
Yeah, go on. Yeah, if you put them
boys.
way ahead of the cav and have them do the charge bit. He can also provide
It
a
has to be
constant 22% weakness to fire, which if you're going for like a fire-focused army, maybe that could be something helpful.
That could be useful. Or if you're you throw the Thane into someone else's army and just that is using fire. Throw it in the front line, and congrats,
you've got that. But
just
overall, you're just using him as like a single entity stick because he's got 120 armor and 55 melee defense, so he's just a sticking point pretty much.
Goose is calling us nerds now.
Is he? He's the real nerd. He plays dumb deep rock game, dumb dwarf game. Dwarf. Look, here's your dwarves. They're trash.
The master
Engineer.
the engine man.
Beep, beep,
He fixes your cars. He
fixes your
puts
cannons.
new tires on your pickup trucks. You know.
Loads explosive ammunition.
Yeah.
Everything you want.
Powder, pretty straightforward.
Typical extra powder buff that you can get.
Entrenchment.
So only affects explosive. Entrenchment is an interesting ability. I've tried to make use of it, but I haven't had much luck. Any of you?
40% piercing missile damage.
Can't move. For 44 seconds, the unit cannot move.
That's fine for like artillery, I guess. But
I mean, you think it is, but when they get close and they can't turn.
Well, the thing is, okay. Here's the thing, though. If you can't turn, like, thing is, wait, as in like the unit is stuck in place.
Yeah,
it can't actively.
It can only look in a direct. Yeah, it can only look in the direction it's looking. I'm pretty sure.
I mean, Shogunek is kind of right. He says that he likes it against Empire.
That
the
does
problem,
help.
I guess, is that like Dwarf. Yeah, I mean, probably, but like, why would the Empire go for an artillery duel? Because they will lose it in any case, unless they go like.
Yeah, Empire already
kind of
lose that matchup.
So I mean, it's probably a good idea if you're fighting against Empire, but.
You can see, I think probably the best target for this is just on himself. I think just using it on the Master Engineer himself because he can rotate on his axis. I think, and it's fine.
Yeah, he can. He can turn and just turn. And
yeah, so
40% more armor-piercing missile damage,
which is a fair amount. That's like pretty good. And also the 22% physical resistance can help occasionally, whenever.
Yeah, because he'll get shot and then he'll be like, "You what, mate?" And
yeah, but he is your typical sniper. Yeah, you can also bring ballistics calibration. Yeah. For accuracy, which is pretty good.
Amazing skill.
Yeah, you mix that in.
It turns your cannon into a fucking sniper rifle.
That, like, on any of your gun units, usually just have like your ranged units sort of clumped up quite close together, and you pop that, and it'll just increase their damage output by a huge amount.
Yeah, you just like it's like Ghost of the Thunder is like, all right, guys, I saved up during our eco rounds. We can get ops now, boys.
Yeah.
Good.
Only get to use them for 32 seconds there.
Yeah, but we can only use them for this round.
Yeah, he is your typical range support unit. He also does come with some interesting items. He can provide a flat 15%, not percent, just 15 accuracy to everything in range.
Which is good.
Constantly, which is really good. Again, you're going to be sticking him usually with the rest of your range units because he buffs them up, so having that is fine. And he also comes with a breath spell, which you really wouldn't expect from dwarves, would you? No, so it definitely can catch some compositions off guard with that.
Pretty much anything with mass chaff, he can just wipe out the front line.
Typically, sometimes
if I remember right.
Sometimes you will bring like ethereal units against dwarves because they don't have that much magic damage, and ethereal units have armor piercing, so this can definitely catch some ethereal things off guard. Yeah.
It is just Scab's Wraith. I think you sometimes see like two Master Engineers if you're really going for like the snipe kind of build because they do decent damage against single entities, like high range armor piercing.
Quite good.
Kind of like the Vampire Coast will do, like most times. We will get to that, I guess.
Yeah,
we'll get into that.
And then you can use the fiber rings to basically make a box and burn the enemy front line to ash. While you use like your Master Engineers and maybe one artillery piece to force the enemy in.
And but
yeah, but so this ring it's fairly decent. Assuming even if you're just using it on just like basic chaff units, it's probably going to make its money back. It's only 155 gold, so I'd recommend bringing this pretty much all the time.
Yeah, breaking the front line is worth it usually, or just
yeah, because you'll typically see sort of a chaffy front line against dwarves to sort of hold them in place. So this can help clear that up. Even if you just use this on like marauders, that's like made its money back already. Just one use of it on marauders is fine.
because Marauders are about 300 gold. So.
Yeah, so that works out quite because it will kill like half the unit.
Got the value.
Yeah. So yeah, typical range support. He's a sniper himself, so can act as a pretty like useful sort of cannon tool. And he gets to the scab scrape as well. Pretty good.
Yeah.
The Runesmith is basically just a downgraded Rune Lord. I don't believe there's anything. His runes are just sort of worse versions. So I don't even know what's worse about that, but it's already terrible. So I don't use that. This one gets basically 30 less armor. This one gets a shorter duration by 15 seconds, I think, and this one goes down to 22% damage instead of 44.
4 uses, though.
Yeah, you get 4 uses instead of the 3.
Like 15. Honestly, like 15 seconds is usually long enough for you to kill
whatever. Is it 15 seconds? Yeah, it's 15 seconds.
It's duration of 15 seconds. The other one is 30 seconds, but
yeah,
you only get to use it 3 times.
The difference was 15.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like that's what I was thinking. Is like I guess you could have the thing with the Rune Lord's slow, but it's kind of redundant because the Rune Lord already has a really strong. Like the basic Runesmith has its fine 72% minus speed, which is fine. Like Rune Lord is like if you really want to go overkill and stack those 2 versions.
Or if you want to bring like the whole chair and the Master of Rune of Negation sort of thing, because the Rune of Negation on the Runesmith isn't really worth it. 22% damage resist isn't. I mean, it's basically it's basically. I think it's got a longer duration as well. Yeah, it does. It does have a longer duration actually. So it's basically your typical like what's the one the Slan get? They get like 22% as well, don't they? The big bubbles. Ones. Shield the old ones. Yeah, that's a 20% as well.
It's not a. I wouldn't say the Runesmith is bad. Like
if you
take the same 2 runes that are good, you can bring it if you want to bring like Grombrindle or another lord.
I'd basically say you always want one of the. You should think of runes as magic. You basically want one of them. If you bring in the Rune Lord, you don't need a Runesmith as well usually. But if you're not bringing a Rune Lord, then you bring a Runesmith. I'd say you always want a Runesmith.
Use it on regular Iron Drakes on the front line and put them on guard mode and watch the world burn.
Oh yeah, entrenchment.
The
entrenchment one, yeah. Yeah, I'll do it. He also comes with a Hammer of Karak Draz, which is just a huge debuff to something's attack power. But it only recharges when he's in melee. Yeah, it only recharges. Which he's like basically a caster. His stats are 40-30, but he has 120 armor, so he's probably gonna last a fair amount against chaff.
The only way I'd see that as being useful is in the scenario of dealing with assassins.
Yeah, dealing with assassin characters like Snitch, or you're dealing with like a really beefy
if they come
lord.
Up on your lord and you're like, oh shit, you drop that on them, and for
they
50
do nothing
seconds,
basically.
They can't hit them anymore.
Yeah, or at least it cuts them in half at least.
It nullifies
damage by quite a bit.
Yeah.
So potentially useful. His other one again is just another leadership buff, which you probably don't need unless you bring in Felix.
Yeah.
Of course, we're going on to Gotrek and Felix that we covered. We did. Have we covered the? I think we have covered them several times before. But Felix is especially good. In Gotrek, not so much because you already have access to like Ungrim and Grombrindle.
Slayers.
Yeah, and Slayers. So really, Felix is the star of the show in this roster for once, because he provides healing in a roster that is desperately good if it gets healing. You'll typically see a combination of Dwarf Lord, Runesmith, and Felix. This is a pretty common trio that you'll see, because you giving Grombrindle access to healing is huge. Not to mention that you can also get a Helping Hand, which provides an extra 40 melee attack and 44 melee defense to a target.
Actually, the minus 40 melee attack on enemies that try and attack Grombrindle is useful as well, because Grombrindle has pretty bad melee defense.
Defense is flat out, yeah. So that 44% damage resist really helps.
Yep.
And of course the passive healing as well, because dwarves don't take damage very quickly often, so getting that 8 regeneration hit point is really good. His item is negligible, to be honest.
Alright.
In this roster. But now we're on to the meat.
Yeah,
so we don't need to go with the Gotrek again. Moving just onto the meat.
First up is some
miners.
Boys in a pickup truck.
Yeah, they're miners. They are really cheap infantry. The only thing that's really special that separates them from different cheap infantry is their 80 armor. And they have armor piercing as well. But having 80 armor on infantry, this goes for all dwarf infantry, but these especially because of how cheap they are, and they have 80 armor is like insane. Yeah. Like how much do Chaos Warriors have? That's 80 as well, isn't it?
Chaos Warriors have they have 100.
They have 100, but still, it's like 20 less, and it's nearly half the cost of the Chaos Warrior unit. It is half the cost. It's over half the cost. Under half the cost.
Yeah, it's under half the cost. But here's the other thing is that they actually have more armor than Forsaken.
Yeah, these miners are really armored for their cost. They don't have any shields.
Route like shit.
Yeah,
like
they do. Yeah.
Compared to dwarfs, they really, really easily route, which is
well, okay,
like
easy with the largest quotation marks Microsoft Word can apply.
Yeah, because it's dwarves, but relative to dwarves, these guys
minus like
yeah,
the one unit from the dwarf cluster that routes.
Relative to like other dwarf units, these guys are complete cowards. I mean, you can tell it because he has like Felix only has 2 more leadership than them.
They
So.
literally conscripted this guy out of the fucking coal mines.
Yeah, pretty much, because you can tell from their stats are just abysmal. 20 melee attack and 18 melee defense. The only thing saving them on the stat card is their armor. Yeah. It's basically the only thing that makes them considerable. Typically, you won't. Typically, I mean, they also have Vanguard deployment, which can be good for some shenanigans occasionally, but typically you're not bringing these guys. If you are bringing these guys, you're bringing the blasting charge variant. Just for the blasting charges, because they're insanely good at clearing out chaff really quickly.
Yep.
Because of the low melee attack on like pretty much every dwarf infantry, you can't clear chaff efficiently, so you can just get overwhelmed quite easily, but miners with blasting charges fix that really quickly. A single volley is enough to kill like a bleak sword unit instantly, and send it running. And I don't know how many volleys they get. I think they get 3. Is it 2? Is it like 2.5?
One volley. Minus blasting charges have 1 volley. They just like normally they're stacked pretty deep, so they throw the charges in at like different times.
Right.
So it seems like they have more ammo that they actually have.
Yeah.
Which is also a trick how you can get rid of the blasting charges is by running like a chariot or something in. They're also like a bit slow, so if your opponent has them on fire at will, they will basically waste their charges.
But or you could just throw armored infantry in there, like. I could just take my Chaos Warriors, toss them in, and then they just.
Because the blasting charges aren't armor piercing the slightest. They have like 0. Yeah, 0 armor piercing. Well, they have 7 explosive armor piercing, but that's like nothing basically on an explosive unit.
Yeah, 7 whole damage. Oof.
It's not much. Like you're only using these guys basically to clear out chaff if you're expecting chaff. So against like greenskins, against like any elf faction, it works quite well against because all that elf infantry is quite light armored usually.
Marauders.
Dryads.
Yeah, marauders, dryads, anything. Just if you're expecting some sort of low infantry chaff, then it's definitely worth taking these guys. You don't usually bring them as your front line. You just have them like sort of 1 or 2 or 3 of them mixed in between your frontline units. Moving on to a frontline unit is Dwarf Warriors.
Some good old boys that know how to fight.
Yeah, symmetrical. This is a frontline infantry. Again, looking at their stat card, the only thing saving them is their 40 melee defense and their 85 armor. They are a holding unit if there ever was.
70 leadership.
Yeah, 70 leadership is also pretty good for their cost.
But that plus 12 charge bonus buff on the.
Oh yeah, double it. Ooh, nice.
Yeah.
But
and 28 speed. Those guys are gonna be.
Insanely
it only takes
good.
them 5 minutes to walk over the battlefield.
And then they'll get there. Imagine having a charge bonus almost as great as your speed.
I know.
That's something else. I don't even know how that one works out. But yeah, Dwarf Warriors are like pretty much chaff. You can really think of them as chaff, as just a really strong holding chaff unit.
There's also something else we should probably point out. For pretty much all the Dwarf Warriors is that they all get a charge defense against large
foes. Yeah, I believe that only applies to the shielded variants of things. Yeah, it does.
Great.
It's just the shielded variants.
Shielded variants, but the key thing for that is it makes it so that you can't really punish a dwarf player for bringing a bunch of random shield units and having no spears. But I guess that's just the nature of dwarves.
You typically want like to stand. That's another reason why you don't want to charge out usually and try and use that amazing 12 charge bonus, is because you don't want to lose that charge defense against large foes, otherwise you just get run over.
Yeah.
But their stats are like nothing to be amazed at, and they have the bronze shield, so they're fairly decent at absorbing ranged firepower, but nothing too special. Looking at like the great weapon variant, the great weapons are like everything. Yeah, which isn't really what you want. Yeah, you lose 10 melee defense, which is basically all the stats that are there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend the great weapon variant ever.
Actually, looking at it's like a reverse marauder with great weapon.
Yeah. Minus 10 melee defense is really bad, and for like an extra 50 gold, it's like, and also you lose the shield as well, so you lose that sort of missile resistance.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend bringing the great weapon variant in any situation. I don't think so.
If you want to bring like great weapon, you'd probably want to bring like long beards.
Yeah, long beards. Or just bring guns or any other source of armor piercing. Don't really need it in your cheap, terribly statted Dwarf Warrior units.
always lose to everything.
An ROR of the miners, blasting charges. These ones actually do get a couple more volleys, and they also get frenzy, as well as the usual stat increases. That's about it. They're a pretty. I'd recommend. It's one of those situations where if you have the money for it, they're not terrible. So if you have the money for it, bring them over a miners with blasting charges.
You could probably put them behind like your front line.
Yeah.
And they throw one set of charges, two sets of charges, three sets of charges, and then engage.
Yeah, if you have the money for it, switch out one of your regular miners with blasting charges with one of these boys. It's nothing you really need to get too excited about, but it's definitely something worth doing.
Yeah, because blasting charges do easily arc over your own infantry and will not hit your own infantry.
Especially with how short they are. That helps as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you have the money for it, replace one of your regular ones with this RR. That's this RR is. Warriors of Dragonfire Pass.
You really need fire damage and an anti-infantry bonus on a unit that's not going to kill
anything.
Infantry.
Well, no, I could see this like if you're against Wood Elves and you're dealing with Dryads.
Yeah, against Wood Elves.
Yeah, if you really need fire damage, it's useful, but that's
against Wood Elves. It's good. I sometimes have the situation where like I'm bringing a Longbeard front line, and then I think I probably want to. Do I want to switch out one of my Longbeards for a Warriors of Dragonfire Pass because they're very similar.
Yeah.
Just this one is the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass are more about damage output, and the Longbeards are more about holding. So, but again, minus 600 health.
How much is
it's probably not.
Bonus, actually?
It's 6. So it goes up to 35 melee attack.
It's like nothing.
That's not very good.
No, yeah, I
if it was
definitely.
10, if it was 10,
it was something like better,
I'd
more
get
decent.
Behind that. I could get behind that, but
yeah, basically only good against Wood Elves. Wouldn't recommend in other situations.
You'd only bring it if you're dealing with like Treekin or Dryads.
Yeah, that's basically
maybe
it.
Skaven for the regeneration.
But then again, the regeneration isn't on infantry usually. It's on large.
Maybe Norska as well, probably.
There's no.
Norska, Skin
Wolves, but also
yeah, if again the anti-infantry again, then isn't it?
Yeah, the problem is that if they're fighting Skin Wolves, they're not. The Norskin player has made some really poor decisions.
Yeah, if you're bringing Skin Wolves against Dwarfs.
Yeah. No, but you expect the Angrim pick then.
No. Yeah, so not good.
Not the Angrim, the Thorgrim pick.
The Thorgrim, Rune Lord chair pick.
Yes.
Yeah, so 700 gold unit, not very good. A 700 gold unit that is really good, that everyone wants to talk about, is the Longbeard. It's the Longbeards. Everyone knows them. Everybody loves them, right?
It's
6,450 health, 100 armor, silver shield, 80 leadership, 48 melee defense. These guys are not dying. They refuse to die. Local dwarf too angry to die.
Immunity to psychology.
Yeah, and encourage.
Leadership to nearby units, which are not Longbeards because they buff each other, I think.
With the exception of leadership and the immune to psychology, they I think almost have the same stats as Chaos Warriors, but are cheaper.
Yeah.
It is what makes me so angry about dwarves.
And
the fact that Chaos Warriors.
And these have immune to psychology. Yours don't.
Yeah, I know they have immune to psychology. How is a Longbeard have fucking immune to psychology?
Short angry man.
Warrior from the wastes
will never run.
Yeah, it's like
so many times I've seen like literally 2 dwarves be left in that unit and they still have 20 leadership or something.
Yeah, despite these being 700 gold.
Even thinking, why?
Why? Despite these being 700 gold, these are basically your frontline unit. Dwarf warriors typically aren't worth bringing that often, but typically your typical dwarf frontline, nearly I'd say at least 70% of the time is just Longbeards and then miners with blasting charges. There you go.
Yep.
There's your frontline sorted for dwarves. It's not too complicated. I mean, neither is the Vampire Coast one we'll get onto. It's pretty much just zombies. There's nothing else. Are you gonna bring a Cyrene front line? No. It's two real simple front lines you've got here. The Longbeards with great weapons can be good. I think you're only usually bringing them against like Chaos.
Yeah. That's only if Chaos decides that they want to bother bringing Chaos Warriors.
I mean, even against Forsaken have a fair amount of armor as well.
They do, but you wouldn't bring Forsaken against dwarves because you have
but
they don't have the armor piercing to kill anything. You'd probably just bring Chaos Warriors with great weapons, and some regular Chaos Warriors to just soak up shots.
Yeah, you might be tempted to go like 1 or 2, like maybe you probably don't want a full front line of Longbeards with great weapons. You probably just like 2 of each, maybe in a situation where you're expecting like some armored units. I don't know how they perform against like greatsword. They probably don't perform too well against like anti-infantry armor piercing stuff.
Yeah, they don't.
But they will definitely put a lot more damage into armored things. Which, if you are expecting some armor, like against chaos or against if you're against dwarves, for instance, or you're against maybe against Bretonia, because they don't keep their oh no, they do. They still have their charge defense versus large actually.
Yeah.
So that is a fair, maybe against Bretonia, maybe against Tomb Kings.
That's what I meant. The fucking Longbeards still get their charge.
Yeah, even with their axe.
I think all of the great weapons still get their charge bonus.
I don't think the regular dwarf warriors don't. Dwarf warriors with they don't get theirs. Hammers don't have theirs, unfortunately.
So yeah, but the Longbeards do, which like dwarf Longbeards are probably the most cost efficient unit in the game, I think.
Yeah, I think
when it comes to a frontline infantry.
If you want some like armor piercing against large, and you don't want to bring thunderers for some reason, bring these. I'd honestly bring Longbeards with great weapons over giant slayers probably.
Yeah.
So it's definitely an option. Or if you're just worried about like that really armored front line, like chaos basically, or it's basically just chaos.
Yeah, it's pretty
more
much
or less. Maybe against vampire counts if we deal with Graveguard. Because I don't know how do Graveguard perform against Longbeards. I don't know who wins that fight. I think the Longbeards win.
Lose.
Do they? Yeah,
the
they would do.
Graveguard lose.
But with healing and stuff, it could switch things up.
The stats are just too
What about Graveguard with great weapons? Because that's probably more likely what you'll see.
I think maybe.
Yeah, I definitely think Longbeards with great weapons would win that. I think.
Yeah,
as opposed to regular Longbeards.
Without healing.
Yeah.
They'd win without healing.
There's definitely situations that you can think about where you would want to bring the great weapon variant, but most of the time you can settle with just 4 Longbeards and you don't have to think about it too hard.
Yeah, that's why also.
Or 3 Longbeards.
There's a reason why people don't really respect people who just sit and play dwarves.
Yeah, because you can just bring Longbeards and they're really good. They're insanely good.
You can't screw up Longbeards.
No, they're good. A bit more of a different unit in the old dwarf roster, Slayers. No armor. Who would have thought about it? A dwarf unit with 0 armor. That's insane. Yeah, unbreakable as well, but most stuff is already unbreakable in the dwarf roster, so that's not much. But the main thing about them is they actually have better damage output than they do have defensive stats. Still have 32 melee defense, which is pretty good, but 38 melee attack, 48 weapon strength, as well as an extra 24 bonus versus large. It means they have a huge amount of damage output.
Yeah, but they have a speed of 40, which is faster than most infantry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is pretty good.
Catch up to slow down Cav pretty easily.
Yeah, so if you're dropping like Rune of Wrath of Ruin or some of those slows or like Smoke Bomb, Slayers will definitely catch things pretty well. They are a bit of an oddball unit, so you don't tend to see them getting countered too often as well, because who's going to bring like non-armor piercing missiles or like really good like non-armor piercing anti-infantry units against dwarves?
Well, you could bring like just 1 unit of slingers just for shits and giggles.
Yeah, just for there. But even then, you usually typically have your slayers in the back line, so even if your opponent does have a counter for your slayers, it's unlikely they're going to get there to do much about it.
Unless it's like skirmish cav or something with longer range.
Your slayers are basically just your anti-large sort of like backline unit that defends your backline, basically.
Yeah.
That is what your slayers are there for. And they also have whirling axes. Not something to notice. They have their whirling axes. It's not the whirling axes. It's the when they die, they do a hit and it kills things. Yeah.
It's down. The modifier's at the bottom. It's actually.
Although it doesn't actually. It doesn't actually say it because they do actually have the effect where when they die, they like do the swing, the final hit on something.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's under death blow. It's the same thing as a death blow. Because it's not just under the modifier.
Get army, start game, grab popcorn, win.
Yeah. Shoot, repeat. But yeah, Slayers are basically backline unit. They're there to help with the backline support. Just talking about giant Slayers now as well. They're not good.
They have armor piercing.
Yeah, there's the armor piercing version with way worse stats. And they're 300 more. They're not.
Yeah.
Oh, actually no, they have better stats. What was I looking at?
Yeah, they have better melee. They have better combat stats.
Yeah, they have better combat stats and better just overall stats and everything. But 300 gold more is a lot more.
But it's for the armor piercing that you're bringing them in for, so you can just. And also they having 48 melee attack is still pretty good.
It's insanely good, but still.
It's
still
a niche pick.
The key problem though is that you're not getting the missile block.
No, you're not. And because they have no armor as well, it's like a really nice unit to shoot. Like Slayers are there for a good unit to shoot, but when you have like 3 units of them, you don't mind too much. But when you just have like 2 units of giant slayers, you really do care when they get shot.
Yeah, and also the other thing is that the regular slayers do have that missile block, so they can actually mitigate some of that damage.
And they actually come with the bronze shield. They can whack missiles out of the air with.
Yeah.
As opposed to the giant slayers, which don't. So it ends up being that you just end up putting too much money into a unit with like no defensive capabilities whatsoever, which is just a bit of an issue in terms of them. The ROR of slayers, talk about them now as well. They're really good. They come with a physical resistance, which again helps with that sort of defensiveness of them, in that the fact that you don't have to worry about them getting sniped too much. But the main thing about them is they come with this little ability, which gives them flame resistance. It makes things weak to fire, but that doesn't really matter. What does matter is the minus 36% speed, which basically means if they catch something, it's unlikely it's going to be able to get away, unless it's a pretty fast cav or single entity unit. So it's again a really good backline unit. You pretty much, if you have I'd say you always want to switch one of your regular slayers out with this one.
Yeah, there's no reason. It's like Dragon Princes. There's no reason not to bring that unit.
Yeah, they're just really good. The slow is so helpful for dwarves, especially when it's on a backline unit that's going to be killing those large targets. It just works out really well for them. You pretty much always want to bring this.
The Dragon Princes. Because I thought the Slayers... Go to the regular Slayers for a second. I want to check something.
Slayers don't have physical resistance. They don't have the...
they don't have the charge against...
Oh yeah, they also have a charge defense against large as well, yeah.
Yeah, because that's what... The regular Slayers, you can actually potentially just cycle charge them into the ground.
Yeah, potentially, but not with the Dragonback Slayers, because they have that charge defense.
Yeah, they have the charge defense.
And the slow, which means if you do cycle charge into them, they're going to get caught and they're going to die.
Yeah. But if they only have regular slayers and either their missiles are too preoccupied or you've been damaging them too much, you could potentially just cycle charge the slayers into the ground, and there's not much the dwarf player can do.
Yeah, but these Dragonback Slayers fix that problem a lot. I'd recommend bringing Dragonback Slayers over a regular unit of Slayers or pretty much any day.
Literally, no reason not to.
Turning back a bit, looking at hammerers.
They hammer things.
They hammer things. Again.
What about the ROR for the Great Weapon? Longbeards?
Oh yeah, I missed that one. Yeah. Grumbling Guard. I missed that one.
They're pretty good.
Yeah, they're basically... It's 250. They get the usual stat buffs that come with chevrons, and they come with this effect, where they... Does that passively regenerate like 9% vigor?
Duration 5, so
yeah.
Every 5 seconds it increases vigor by 9%.
So it's basically a vigor regeneration engine, more or less.
I don't think it's a regeneration. I think it just gives more vigor, so you are losing less.
That is the regeneration of vigor.
It regenerates vigor just flat out, doesn't it?
Yeah, flat out. It's literally like the vigor ability on lords.
Oh right, so like Foe Seeker. It's like constantly triggering Foe Seeker every 5 seconds. Actually, it's not quite a full Foe Seeker. It's like half a Foe Seeker.
But,
yeah, it's half a Foe Seeker every 5 seconds. But that's really good.
5 seconds.
And all things in range.
Yeah.
That
so
is pretty decent.
You pop that with... Put him in your front line in the center of your
it's every effect thing. So it's like if you're going for that tighter formation, I'd recommend probably bringing one of these boys. If you're going for that AoE sort of buff formation of the dwarf box, typically
and they will never get tired because one of the problems, one of the things you want to do is try and tire out the dwarves as well.
So they have literally no speed and like no attack stats. Yeah.
As long as the Grumbling Guard is alive and fighting, you will never tire them out.
It has a 25-second cooldown, like Rampage points.
Oh yeah,
so
25. So it's every like 30 seconds. So it triggers half a Foe Seeker.
Yeah, for a second.
I thought 5 seconds seemed a bit much. Just like that's 10% vigor every 5 seconds. That's like 50 seconds. You got completely full vigor in
Balanced
battle.
As all things should be. Am I right?
Yeah. So 30 seconds. Every 30 seconds regenerates basically 10% vigor.
Yeah.
Which...
Well, technically, it has an uptime of 5 seconds. So every 20 seconds.
Oh yeah, so yeah, it'd be every 20 seconds, it'd be minus from plus.
Yeah, it has minus. Yeah, so it has an uptime of 20 seconds, which is still
fairly
good
decent
to keep the front line in working order.
Yeah, I don't think it's not something you usually go out your way to get, but if you're going for that sort of tight box formation that dwarves typically go for, or can sometimes go for, I'd recommend bringing this because it's something to keep the vigor up constantly.
Yeah, and with the Grumbling Guard, it makes those longer games just more painful for your opponent because your units will not be tired.
Yeah, definitely something really good to bring in like a 3v3 or the 4v4 or a 3-for-all, something those drawn out fights, because it's just going to keep going constantly at peak capacity. Going back to hammerers, boy, I do not have much of an impression of these.
For the amount they cost and for the like elite infantry label, they're doing a surprisingly low amount of damage.
Yeah, they're not doing
they're
awful lot.
Kind of shit.
Not to mention they're really out of place in terms of the Dwarf roster. Like they're a really heavy focused damage dealer. Infantry, no shield, no charge bonus against large. It's very focused on killing large. It's really focused on killing infantry even, which is not something dwarves usually struggle with. Like Longbeards can kill most infantry.
Can do that more effectively.
Anything that's expensive enough to kill Longbeards is basically you're killing with your artillery and ranged, so you don't usually need hammerers in the first place.
And I think hammers have less models than.
I think they have less. Do they have less HP? No, they have more HP. They have the same amount of models. But still, it's like that situation of they're really out of place.
Like the only reason I think is like, okay, compare them to longer great weapons. Like let's look at the
compare them. I think it's so they have an extra 16 melee attack, 450 health, 2 speed. Well, that's negligible. 21 weapon strength, and
you're paying for the melee attack.
Bonus. Yeah, you're paying for that extra 16 melee attack more or less.
And damage, and that's a
21 weapon strength as well, pretty good.
If you got that plus 12 charge bonus.
Oh wow, that's 36 charge bonus on hammers. Yo, they're basically a shot cav at this point. Just roll them around the place. But yeah, nothing too special. Like they have, I think 46 melee attack isn't enough to like. It's not good enough, frankly. It's like they have no bonuses either, so it's just not good enough.
They can be good against chaos since they usually take loads of chaos warriors with great weapons. Like
you can. I think Longbeards beat chaos warriors with great weapons, so you can just bring Longbeards with great weapons, don't they?
Well, like they'll fight each other to a standstill, but hammers will beat them.
Yeah, and also chaos warriors with great weapons, an amazing target for thunderers. Brilliant target. Just bring 5 units of thunderers and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
We'll get onto them later, but thunderers, I love thunderers. They're great.
Yeah, they shoot things. And
they shoot.
Of the low height of the dwarves, they can shoot over their own heads into the enemy unit that is currently fighting.
Works very nicely. Yeah, so hammers leave something to be desired. Not a particularly helpful unit in what the dwarf playstyle usually is.
Yeah, it's weird.
Ironbreakers.
Ironbreakers, they're your never retreat, never give up infantry.
Never die, pretty much.
Yeah,
they did get nerfed recently, didn't they? They got nerfed, unfortunately. Which I don't know why. Nobody people really brought them before.
No one brought them to begin with.
Ironbreakers.
Yeah, but there are Ironbreakers.
They need the nerf. They need to be shut down a peg. Yeah. Comparing them to Thunderer, I think it's always a good, because you'll notice there's sort of like a scaling system with infantry in the dwarf roster. You go miners, dwarf warriors, longbeards, and then you break into either Ironbreakers or hammers. So like comparing longbeards with Ironbreakers, it's not that much of a difference actually. It's like 18 extra melee defense and 25 armor.
Yeah, because
that's it.
The funny thing is, it's like they're sort of like, let's say quotations like the Chosen for dwarves, but the thing is, Chosen are actually better than them.
Chosen have way better stats than these. These have like no damage output. Relative to their cost, they have like no damage output.
The only reason you'd bring Ironbreakers is for their stupid bombs.
Yeah, they come with the blasting charges.
Oh wait.
But it's like
they dropped the ammunition from 3 to 2.
Oh yeah, they did. They only have like no volleys whatsoever.
Yeah, they only have 2 now, and it does less damage, and it doesn't do fire damage anymore. Why? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, those blasting charges are clearly not made by like fiery explosions.
No, clearly, no. They're definitely a frost bomb. That's what they are. No fire damage included.
No, it's like a fucking IRA nail bombs. Just.
Oh, it's frag grenades. There's no fire damage involved.
Fragmentation grenades.
Absolutely no fire damage. Don't know how they're that advanced, but they're doing it somehow. Yeah, just for comparison's sake, it's like it's cheaper to bring a unit of miners with blasting charges and a unit of longbeards than it is to bring a unit of Ironbreakers.
Yeah.
That is probably just a better idea in any situation than to bring Ironbreakers. Yeah. Not to mention that Ironbreakers are like a really good target for any sort of armor-piercing spell or like any artillery or any single entity. A single entity would love to charge through some Ironbreakers, as soon as it's from the flanks.
I'm kind of curious what the difference in stats between Ironbreaker and Chosen is, because Chosen is around is only 50 gold more.
Let's have a quick look. All right, so
it's the
Chosen
scenario
compared to long Ironbreakers. There you go. They have 6. Wow, they have really terrible stats relative. That is so much worse. They only have 6 extra melee defense, and that's it.
Yeah, it's like
Chosen are significantly better
in
all ways.
Significantly better basic units, but
elite units are really better. The elite units of the Dwarves are not good, to be frank.
Yeah, they're
Dragon Back Slayers is like the one exception.
Because I've been thinking of seeing us like if bringing Chosen against Dwarves actually might be worth it, because the stats are just so high that the Dwarves won't be able to handle.
I mean, they make a nice target for artillery, so.
Yeah, but also that's what suicide runs are for
taking out the artillery, yeah. But yeah, Ironbreakers, then they're not that good. I think Dwarf elite infantry just sort of lacks in their situation. If you really want them Ironbreakers, just bring a long beard and a miners with blasting charges instead.
Yeah.
The ROR hammers are one of the only sources of magic damage and also an armor sundering benefit, which it probably can have its uses in a sort of like Longbeard centered front line if you're not bringing those great weapons and you don't have the armor piercing. Minus 30 armor is something. I think the magic damage is definitely something as well.
Attack.
Yeah, 57 is pretty big. I think it's probably the largest melee attack on a dwarf unit.
Yeah, and 90 leadership. Like the ROR version of hammers, pretty good.
Pretty alright compared to hammers.
It's the cost of 2 Longbeards.
Yeah, there is that. I think if you are bringing these guys, you really want to make advantage of either the armor sundering or the magic damage. The stats wise, it's just not going to hold off compared to just 2 regular Longbeards.
I found the magic damage quite good against like Sirens, if you're going for versus counts or coast.
Yeah, if you're going against count or coast, I can definitely see. Well, maybe not. I think coast you might suffer with being shot, but definitely against counts, I'd recommend probably bring one of these. Would work out. I can't think of anything else you'd want to bring him against.
Pretty much that.
It's more or less it. Yeah, it's a pretty niche unit.
It's another weird niche thing. Like it's useful for the faction that you're up against. Like if you're against like maybe Saurus and Lizardman, anything that has like 60 armor and you can drop it by 30 would be good.
Yeah, that is helpful, but it's hard to make. Again, it's like giving armor sundering to a slow unit like this. It's only got like 28 speed. It's hard to make full advantage of those sort of status effects that you can apply.
That's where the Thane comes in with his 16% speed.
Yeah, that helps out. That helps swing the tide of battle.
Alright, what about the ROR Ironbreakers?
ROR Ironbreakers, way more health. 79 melee defense. That is a lot of melee defense.
Yeah, they just sit around.
Also an extra 15 models. As well as an extra 1,440 health.
Yeah.
That is a really big increase, but it is a really expensive unit.
Very expensive. It's the weird. It's a scenario that, this is such a great tough unit that won't die. Too bad it doesn't kill anything.
Yeah, too bad one
gigantic target.
Yeah, really nice target for literally anything, like a single Cygor rock or a single cannon round down the side of it.
It's because it's pretty much creeping into like chaos chosen levels of health per unit per model sort of thing. It's 90 units. So what is that? Where's my phone?
It's nearly 100 per model.
Let's see. Oh, what the? There we go. Yeah, 864 divided by 90.
Nearly 100 health per model.
96 health per model.
Mm.
Now
That's
the thing is, the Chosen is different because they only have 60 models, so they actually usually tend to have over 150 per model, which makes them really good for because I think that's the key thing I was thinking about is that they have too many models, meaning that something like a pendulum is still powerful for taking out most of their health.
Still do a good chunk of
damage.
damage.
They don't die. They're the last unit that is alive from
their leadership is too high to die.
Because they're so slow, it doesn't really matter. You can just ignore them. Just go around them. They're not going to do anything important. Even if they touch you, they only have 38 melee attack. That's not too bad.
Bombs at you.
They'll throw those bombs, but they don't have much ammo. They only got 2 ammunition.
Increase, 13 whole damage.
But if they miss or if they hit a target that's not worth it, boy, are they useless.
Yeah. They would give AoE frenzy melee damage buff, like they do on the tabletop. Oh yeah.
Yeah, these ones haven't got that, unfortunately. They do have the Vanguard deployment as well, which is something for shenanigans. Don't know why they have it, but they do.
Yeah, it's fun making a full Vanguard Dwarf army. With,
yeah, that is something with just miners and.
But it's not the optimal. Like, it's not how you're supposed to play the Dwarfs. And
But it catches people off guard.
Yeah, I guess that's the dwarf missile units.
Yeah, melee, yeah, that's it basically. Onto the missile units now. Rangers.
Yeah, if you want to make an Empire player just be like, oh, cool, that's fun.
Yeah, they
bring Rangers and nothing but Rangers.
Your typical
5 units
crossbow unit.
Yeah.
The nice thing about them is they have stalk, so you can really hide them, and like your opponent cannot know what your ranged advantage is like because you bring in these boys.
Yeah, and again, if you're facing armies that actually have range units themselves, or something like Coast or Empire, it's very annoying to deal with them because they have to wait till you shoot, which at that point
before they can see them. So any artillery advantage won't matter.
They have shields. They count as having shields at all times, so they actually block missiles. So if you don't get the first shot off, you're gonna lose.
You're almost certainly gonna use that.
Yeah, it's for 525. They actually have okay stats. Like they got the stats of like the Dwarf Warriors.
Yeah, which they don't have the health, but still, it's pretty good.
It's because I know that if you really want to make an Empire player, just leave the match. Just bring 5 of those and 5 of the great weapon ones, and then just.
Yeah, they perform all the matchups that Dwarves perform really well in. Vampire Coast against Empire. They perform well because of Rangers, because Rangers perform just really well at countering their ranged units. And when their ranged units are dead, it pretty much means that they're trying to win the infantry fight. And when you're trying to win the infantry fight against Dwarves, that you just don't. You just do not usually win the infantry fight.
Get away with that.
It's like what units, looking at Empire for example, they need great swords in order to win the infantry fight, and they'll get shredded by Rangers, and Rangers will shred all their counter range, so they're really strong.
Because great weapon Rangers are armor piercing.
Yeah, for some reason, but they have a much shorter range. We'll get into those in a minute. Regular Quarrelers, honestly, I think, like, in terms of differences, the Quarrelers only ever so slightly different than to Rangers.
Double the armor.
They have, on paper, it looks like they're a lot better, but because of that missing Stalk feature, like I've talked to this before, why Stalk is such an amazing thing to have on ranged units, because it means they can't get killed before they reach the line of fire. So I don't think there's a situation where you don't bring Rangers instead of Quarrelers.
Once the Rangers were brought into the game, no one ever brought Quarrelers.
No, yeah, you just don't bring Quarrelers anymore. You just bring Rangers instead.
Because their Rangers are cheaper and just overall better.
Yeah, the Stalk just means they're so much more reliable. The only thing you're really losing out on is also they're faster as well, which on a ranged unit is definitely what you want. You don't want them to be like better in melee, too particularly.
Yeah.
They're not usually running out of ammo that often anyway, so yeah, just in any situation I'd recommend Rangers over Quarrelers.
By the time they get into melee anyways, they've used all their ammunition.
Yeah. The Quarreler variant with great weapons is just literally a Quarreler unit with an axe, basically. That
they throw at whoever.
No, the Quarreler unit is just literally just a guy he has a great axe instead of a regular axe and shield, so he loses that missile resistance and gets a worse stat pool basically. And I think there's any situation you want to bring these.
Yeah, you might as well just bring regular Quarrelers.
Yeah,
and then long beards with great weapons.
Yeah, and if you want to bring regular Quarrelers, just bring Rangers instead. So.
Yeah, or Slayers.
So they've just been sort of phased out entirely since their conception.
There's 100%. There's no reason to bring regular Quarrelers if you have the DLC for Rangers.
Yeah, and 100%. There's absolutely no reason to bring Quarrelers with great weapons over regular Quarrelers. Rangers with great weapons. I don't get much use out of these two particularly. They have the whole Stalk thing still going for them, but their range is now all the way down to 80, which is like half the range of regular Rangers.
It's a 45 strength missile with armor piercing.
Yeah, that is pretty good.
Like, if you're against any armored front line, or like if you're against great weapons with the Empire, you just win.
You shred those, yeah. Although they don't have the shield and they have 40 armor, so they die to missiles quite quickly. Although they have that Stalk to prevent that. Yeah. Definitely not terrible, but I think we'll move on to it in a minute. But the ROR is probably worth bringing any time over regular ones. Iron Drakes, the flamethrowers. It's like they're way better than warp fire throwers in the fact that they actually usually shoot way often than compared to warp fire throwers do. They also have a nice tighter formation.
There's also the Iron Drake go
vroom and just melt everything in front.
Also 125 armor. Like, they
Yeah.
don't get killed.
They just don't die.
The problem with they suffer from this kind of the same issue, so you need to make them like better. They can't shoot over each other very well, so they're forced to be like either in a line, so you can't turn them really well, or they are really be wasting some of their shots, which is okay if you're on a hill, but not if you're on a
I mean, if you want to
plane, it's
conserve
kinda,
ammo,
like,
then
bad.
maybe you don't want to do that. But...
Yeah, and also in general, like flamethrower units are just like line of sight issues are sometimes there, and if they hit anything, they will actually do a shit ton of damage.
Yeah, they'll melt anything.
They're surprisingly good at shooting like large single entities, like
as long as there's not much armor there, then yeah, they'll do good damage against them as well.
The other thing is that dwarves, due to their short height, they actually kind of circumvent the line of sight problem, because they tend to be able to just shoot over their own unit.
Oh yeah, I notice Iron Drakes fire a lot more often than warp fire throwers. The problem is that actually means sometimes you're firing into the backs of your longbeards, and you end up doing like more damage to your longbeards than anything else.
Remember, not armor piercing.
Not armor piercing, but still, it's like 6 armor piercing. Well, 4 base and then 6 explosive.
Like, let's say for example, you just get a bunch of like regular dwarf warriors, then you have the Iron Drakes behind them. You're fine with losing a bunch of shitty dwarf warriors, and they got the.
Or just miners. But then again, speaking of miners, though, it's like you probably just want blasting charges over Iron Drakes. You're probably getting a bit more. It's way cheaper, and it's like more reliable, arguably.
But Iron Drakes can keep firing for much.
They'll definitely keep going a lot longer, but it's like you'll usually kill the chaff unit on the first volley.
Yeah, but then you can keep using the Iron Drake to keep firing into other units.
Yeah.
Because once if the mining charges go off and only kill like half the unit, the miner is effectively a worthless melee unit other than to stand in the way.
Mm-hmm.
So the fire drakes can keep firing. Like if you had one unit that's just firing into the front line consistently and shooting at whatever unit gets too close, or hell, shooting air units. But you got Thunderers for that.
Here's the problem with whereas like it's quite a problem if they get caught up in melee compared to like miners with blasting charges. If they get caught up in melee, they've probably already thrown their blasting charges, so it doesn't matter. But Iron Drakes, they can get caught out very quickly. They don't have the speed to run away, and they definitely don't have the stats to win. Even with 125 armor, they'll still die to like basic infantry.
Like each
take a
model
while.
gets 128 health as well, so they don't actually have that much health. Unlike, if I remember,
that's a really small amount of health.
Teams actually have decent health.
These do not.
Yeah.
I'd recommend just bringing blasting charges most of the time over them, but there definitely can be situations to use them in.
Yeah, where you're facing either a faction like Wood Elves where they're gonna have like a bunch of dryads, but then they'll get shot to pieces anyway.
Way Watchers because they don't have magical damage or flame damage. So funny thing to say is sometimes you'll see Sisters of Avalon trying to shoot these guys, and that's amusing because of the huge resistances they have.
Yeah, they literally take 0 damage.
Literally there's a cap to it. Like I think the cap's 80%, or is it 90%? Maybe 90%. So they still take like no damage pretty much. Yeah, but they aren't piercing now. So
yeah.
Still quite
Iron
amusing.
Drakes somehow have more AP than the ROR Iron Breakers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the individual models do. Yeah.
Yeah, the same. Yeah, it's probably due to the model count. But MVP of the dwarf roster, the gun. Yeah, Thunderers. These guys are pretty solid.
They give the good shoot.
Make sure whenever you're using these, don't usually want them to stretch out in a thin line. They are lacking the stalk of like rangers, but they make up for it in having really good damage output, like really good, and they have the armor piercing. Really good against all those things sort of dwarfs struggle with. So like big armored monsters, armored cavalry, etc., etc. They just shred them to pieces. Unshielded great weapon units shred to pieces.
Actually, you know something funny? I did the thing where, Thunderers have 71 HP per model. They have a lot of health.
They have a lot of health. Plus, they have the missile resistance, means they trade really well against missiles, and they have 145 range. Yeah. 22 ammo, which is a fair amount of ammo as well. They are your ideal gun unit, more or less. You keep them in a tight box formation, and they can turn on their points really easily. And
on top of that, due to the fact that, as pointed out, dwarves are short, and they can shoot over and into the enemy infantry really easily.
Especially, all it takes is a tiny incline, and you can pretty much have full like 360 vision without having to worry about your own infantry.
And which makes dwarves, which is one of the main reasons dwarves are really frustrating to face against, because the player playing them doesn't have to care about like line of sight.
or anything like
arc of fire or line of sight or anything, because all their units can shoot over each other very easily.
And now with the changes to forest as well, these guys work amazingly in forest lines.
Yep.
Makes it even harder to get. Also, they can make advantage of like the stalk, and they are really hard to counter shoot.
Yeah, you staple the Thunderers to the Longbeards and maybe 1 or 2 blasting charges, and then there you go. There's the core of your army.
Yeah, the 3 staples of the Dwarf roster is just the blasting charge, the Longbeard, and the Thunderer. Just get like 3 of each of these, and you pretty much kill every threat. It's why some of the Dwarf roster can be so simple at times, because it's like these 3.
Because why would you bring anything else?
Everything else you can usually change, but if you just have this will kill like everything. Kills the chaff, holds, shoots everything else. It's just the trifecta of the Dwarf roster.
And as a point, there's a reason why people aren't like particularly. There is no pro dwarf players because you don't need a lot of skill to know how to play dwarves. It's
and the Slayers. There you go. There's the 3 of each. You probably can add an extra one.
Remember?
Oh yeah, the ROR as well.
There you go. Gotta bring that ROR.
And you might see something like Grombrindle and Felix and a Runesmith with less runes. This is a pretty often a baseline sort of thing to work around with dwarves.
Yeah, this is what you would probably normally see, or you would bring like
some variation of this, like you switch something out, you add something else in. You want some artillery, you switch something else in. But just this is the basic sort of trifecta you'll see in most dwarf rosters.
But next is the ROR for the Rangers.
The Ulthar's Rangers. The special thing about them is that they get this really good sniper ability, which reduces armor, missile resistance, and parry chance with shields, which is really good.
It's really good. Whatever lord, maybe some lord has come in to fight Umgrim himself, and you've decided to delete his ass.
Yeah, they also have Stalk and Vanguard, so really good to pair with regular Rangers. Because they drop armor, they drop missile parry chance, they drop missile resistance as well. It's a really good combination. Anything
you could probably have them sneak up behind with 2 units of rangers and just destroy a bunch of artillery and just start taking out, or sneak up on a cavalry unit and just obliterate it instantly. Just
destroy it, yeah. Because then you drop that debuff, you drop like a Wrath of Ruin, and then you just melt anything with this combination. Should also be noted that that's a really high amount of missile strength. 58 is huge. These guys, if they get a full volley off at anything, it's probably going to die instantly.
Yeah, you could probably hit that plus 1 other great weapon ranger, and you could sneak up on whatever cavalry corps the enemy has and just delete
it instantly. Just anything. It doesn't need to be cavalry. Literally any unit will get deleted by 2 volleys of that. There's a single unit that wouldn't.
Be a piece of shit and just. Oh, was that your cavalry you had there? Oh, I'm sorry, was that your bell?
Yeah, Dragon would die instantly. Any armored infantry dies instantly. Any single entity dies immediately.
All they'll see is when they're looking at your army, it's like a little eye pops up in the corner. And
hidden units have been discovered because it is a huge amount of damage. But I've seen Ikit Claw on his Doom Wheel get shredded immediately by a volley of these guys. Yeah. Really high damage output. I'd recommend. And I think there's any situation.
I think their missile strength
is a bit high, like 58. Like, what are they throwing at them? They're throwing Tomahawk missiles at them because my god, that is a lot of strength.
Marauder Horsemasters for Chaos have 40 missile strength, and they can bring down a lot of stuff really easily.
Yeah.
But it's not armor piercing. It's like they just took whatever the Horsemasters are taking and then juiced it with whatever fucking rocks they found in their mountain.
Because just looking at the missile stats, sort of comparing things, it basically means that each model is going to do 58 damage per 10 seconds. You times that by 60, and then you get basically 3,000 damage in 10 seconds. Yeah. Again, enough to kill pretty much anything.
It's obscene.
Really good amount of damage.
So
going on to the Drunk Rangers. That's basically what these guys are. They're basically rangers that are good in melee.
They also have regeneration.
Do they have regeneration? I thought it was. Oh yeah, it is regeneration. I thought I could almost sworn it was. They also didn't have perfect figure as well.
No, they regenerate. It's 4 HP per second instead of 8, but it's basically regeneration.
It's basically regeneration.
It's still pretty good. Having any form of regeneration is good. But the problem is they don't regenerate models.
No, and they don't have that much health to begin with, so...
4,800? One second.
It's not too... Longbeards have, Dwarf Warriors have 5,800, so it's not a huge amount.
They have 80 health per model, so...
It's something.
So,
but...
like, if they're facing other infantry or if they're getting shot at with missiles, it can kind of, they can actually withstand it a bit. They can actually regenerate back some of their health because of the damage.
They are also immune to psychology, and they have a charge defense against large. They are very much like just really good missile infantry in terms of melee stats.
Says that they're probably pretty solid for flank defense.
Yeah, flank defense. Although I don't think they're going to be winning anytime soon. Like, the idea is you bring these, you don't need to bring Slayers in the back line, but they're not going to win against anything that Slayers could deal with quite handedly.
Like, they'll shoot and keep them back, but if the person decides, I have melee cast...
Yeah, the problem... Yeah, because they only have 40 armor. That is not a huge amount. They only have 38 melee defense. They do not have the damage output to win against any large things. And if they're fighting, like, flankers, which are typically high damage output, they're not going to be able to make full use of their regeneration. So... awkward. A bit awkward.
They want to run into scenarios that they're facing units that either, one, are shitty missile units that don't do enough damage to... Because with the 40 armor, they still block enough damage that the regeneration is useful. Like, if they're against shitty archers or missile units...
So they're good against, like, chaff. But
yeah.
Who's flanking with, like, marauders these days?
I would say if you wanted to replace, like, your rangers or something with a unit that you know can take missile shots... Like, I guess if you wanted to make them shoot at a unit that is not as expensive as your Longbeards or something, or as an ROR unit. They're also
they still have that stalk, yeah.
Oh yeah. So they have so I guess it's like a better version of Rangers if you really wanted to. If you had the money for it, you could.
Yeah, if you really have them. Well, then again, that's a full 275 gold. It's like, is that worth it?
It's like, because the thing is, at that point, like, for 2 of those, you could bring 3 Rangers.
Yeah, if you are using, it depends on which. If you're using your Rangers as sort of that go out there and that Vanguard deployment strategy, it's probably worth bringing Bugmans. But if you're just using them in your backline as basic archers, just bring regular Rangers.
Yeah.
Rather than anything fancy.
Bugman can actually stand and fight, and because of the regeneration, they'll beat out most weak infantry.
Yeah, and they'll definitely beat Hounds. They'll beat probably like Cav. They'll probably beat Marauders in. Marauder Horsemen in. Even Marauder Horse Masters they might win against.
Horse Masters will win against them because
they only have 40 armor. Yeah, they only have 40 armor, the bug ones. So.
Yeah, the Horse Masters actually have better armor, but they have worse melee stats. That's the thing. Or no, they have better melee attack though. So, I think.
Oh.
Bugsman's 24 melee attack. I think they'd probably the Bugsman would win because they have more units.
Yeah, maybe, and also the regeneration might help.
Yeah, the regeneration would help too.
If they get that charge defense as well.
Yeah. So why wouldn't I just shoot?
Yeah, you just throw as well, probably. Just go around in circles so they can't fire at you.
Yeah.
But moving on, looking at Iron Drake torpedoes.
Torpedoes.
They're
good at killing single large, I guess.
Yeah, more or less. They're really good at killing those single large entities.
Yeah, if you wanna, you see that troll over there?
Yeah, there's a reason they call it a troll hammer torpedo.
Yeah, like
you can basically use these in the very.
Watch me put a hole through a troll.
Yeah, want to watch me do it again? You can basically use these very similar to how you use Thunderers. You're just firing at the exact same targets that Thunderers are typically firing at. The only difference is they have less range, so they need to get closer, but they have way more damage output for being more expensive.
Yeah.
They
work very well with moving box kind of style. You have like 3 infantry units. I think sometimes against counts where you do that. You make like a moving box with like 2 to 3 torpedoes in the centerpiece and basically shoot down the chariots that annoy you. They're really good at shooting down chariots if they get the chance
delete
to shoot
anything.
And they don't get distracted by, if you put them in garden, they don't get distracted by like zombie summons. Also, zombie summons do like nothing against them, and you can still like blast for
125 armor.
Yeah.
So like if you're doing make an actually mobile dwarf playstyle with like a mobile box, which is a better kind of box.
Yeah, it's like you're bringing these in place of like cannons and such.
Their melee stats aren't that great though, but you know that's expected.
Yeah, that's expected from a ranged unit. Yeah, but they're gonna whack them with
walking around with torpedoes on them. What are they gonna do? Smack them?
Smack them over the head with a giant torpedo launcher. Not gonna do much, but yeah, really high damage output against the targets they're going for. I think they work very well against like mammoths and such.
Like flying dragons. Too,
yeah, dragons. Yeah, basically just those big armored single entities or large models.
If you're expecting a monster mash, bring some torpedoes.
Torpedoes will perform a lot better than Thunderers in terms of that situation, but Thunderers are a lot more like adaptable, because Thunderers can be good for like any situation. These guys are basically only going to be good if you have the targets for it.
Also should make a point where, especially if you're facing big single entity monsters, the key thing with Iron Drakes is that they do a lot of burst damage as well.
Yeah, a lot of burst damage. Whereas the Thunderers do a lot of damage a bit slower and have a bit more ammo to make up for it. Iron Drakes do their damage really quickly and do a lot of it.
Yeah, which, especially against monsters, you want to do that tons of damage immediately to cause them to break.
Yeah.
Because something like Arachnarch Spider, 50 leadership, most of the weaker mammoths and other monsters, with the exception of something like a giant, which always has 100 leadership, you want them to suddenly break and run.
Yeah, so that you can fire another volley on them while they're running.
Yep. Or
finish
just
them off.
shoot another unit, whatever poor bastards that's close enough.
Yeah, pretty solid anti-large gunpowder there. Last rate missile unit infantry is the Skulder Guard.
Rampage says I would use cannons over troll hammers in most situations, to be honest.
Yeah, it can vary.
It's a different kind of thing what you're gonna shoot at. Like cannons do slow damage against targets that are not like probably not really single entities and not moving that fast. Like Cav that stands still at some point. Okay, you're gonna hit it. It also has a lot of models, but like troll hammer torpedoes will absolutely delete. Like a flying lord or something that can dodge cannon shots really easily if your opponent has the micro. He won't dodge troll hammer torpedoes. They will kill him if he flies over them. They don't have short range. They have short range though. Like cannons are perfect for long range. It's like different kind of
different
tools.
situations, yeah, but trying to kill fairly the same thing.
You could bring a cannon and the troll hammers.
Yeah, it's possible.
Because the cannons are dirt cheap.
Yeah, that too.
Anyway.
Cannons have a dual purpose of being very good at dealing with over RD as well.
But nobody's bringing the kind of like heavy arty build against dwarfs normally, because you will lose to their cannons.
Yeah, dwarf cannons outmatch any other dwarf cannon.
Yeah.
Any other cannon.
We lost probably just too much for us, so.
With the Master Engineer.
Can we cover the Skulder Guard and how bad they are? I really want to talk how bad they are. Not good.
But wait, what the Skulder's Guard? They get physical resist, I guess. Oh, they do armor piercing.
They fire a different type of volley. They're not a flamethrower infantry. They fire like steam.
That's an interesting difference.
It is.
They have lower range as well, do they?
No.
They have they have 10 more range.
Yeah,
10 more range. Okay, yeah, I know it was different somehow, but
it's less damage, but it's all armor piercing. That's
but it does not fire similar. It's the same as a flamethrower does. As far as I'm aware, they have really awkward firing patterns.
Well, the thing is, like, the flamethrowers were still always useful shooting at large targets, so you could still use it like you use a troll hammer, I guess.
Yeah, I think
with higher rate.
They're more for
like
infantry
hammer,
focused.
But with higher rate of fire.
You know what the steam tank fires? It basically fires those.
I guess, yeah, but
just sort of a bit of bolts of steam.
I think what you could probably look at the Skulder Guard as is just troll hammer torpedoes, but with faster rate of fire.
Yeah, and more for like infantry focused, I think. They have more of their damage is in the explosive than it is in the direct hit.
Yeah. You could probably still bring down large monsters.
Oh yeah, probably, yeah. But again, that's like more expensive than
troll
Iron
hammers
Drakes.
would still be a better option.
And yeah, they don't have the anti-large. 20%, I think.
20%? That's not awful.
There's a lot of resistances. I've probably most resistances on any unit baseline.
Yeah.
But a bit off there. Test them out for yourself and figure out where they belong, because nobody can figure out even to this day. Some actual fast units.
Seen that unit.
You don't see it very often at all. People can't quite determine. Gyrocopters. And they all sort of flying unit. They can drop bombs.
Yeah, no, magic resist, and they drop bombs.
They have bombs to drop. The bombs do a okay amount of damage, ish. It's like comparable to like half a Searing Doom in terms of damage, but you get them in like 3 different models. So it can be good for clearing out infantry. The gun themselves doesn't do an awful lot. I'd recommend just bringing brimstone guns, which do way more damage in terms of missile damage, and they also have more range.
And fire and anti-large.
Yeah, so I'd recommend if you're bringing for like the missile damage, it's that you focus on the brimstone gun a lot more. It should be noted that these are the fastest unit in the dwarf roster, so if you want something to chase off routed units, it can be these, although flying units have always been kind of awkward when it comes to chasing off routed units, because they never seem to pull it through. Really good, but then again, for flying units, that's to be expected.
Well, I don't think a lot of flying units have over 100, except like the really weaker ones.
Yeah, except from the the really weak ones like Felbat and stuff don't. I think.
Which like against pretty much gyrocopters and most of like the dwarf flying units can effectively outrun anything that should kill them.
Mm-hmm.
Which makes I guess one thing that annoys people as well is that their flying units just can run away.
Yeah, they can just get out of there.
They can just run right back over their own guns and not be punished.
Yeah, these are definitely really good like missile targets, but you don't usually if your opponent doesn't bring missiles, these can absolutely make their money's worth. But it's when your opponent brings a counter to these that they all of a sudden don't do anything because they get deleted or they get scared off so much that they can't do anything. So it really depends on what your opponent's doing.
Yeah, because I know like with Chaos, you bring as many Marauder Horsemen with throwing axes, and they will eliminate them. And
frankly, the same applies to like the Gyro Bomber and the Skyhammer torpedo. Yeah. But quick note: Skyhammer is terrible. Don't never bring it.
Granted, if the missiles are slow enough, you can move gyrocopters in a circle, and they will dodge all the missiles.
They will, yeah. But there can be some problems depending on what angle they're firing it.
Yeah, even if they're directly below, they'll miss. It's really stupid because their speed is so fast, and they turn on a dime.
Yeah, they have their bombardment thing for clearing out infantry, and then they have their missile direct fire for clearing out larger targets and armored targets and such.
Yeah, and as I said a while before, gyro bombers do not count as a single target entity, even though it's a single entity.
Which means you can bring four or five even because it's a.
You can bring five.
You can bring five. And it's disgusting, but they're not in banner rules. You can't, by the way. So don't try this in a tournament.
Don't.
It's not going to get you very far with friends.
You'll immediately get banned.
Immediately. Do this in quick battle.
Do it.
He'll do it.
And then I will tell Willows told me it's okay.
No, I didn't. Blame this on me. Yeah, gyro bombers and gyrocopters. It's basically very dependent on what your opponent brings. It's a real risk to bring them because sometimes when you're building against dwarves, you should always think gyrocopters exist. Because if you don't counter them, they're going to do insanely well. If you do counter them, they do literally nothing. So it really depends on what your opponent does. If your opponent counters them, then they're not worth bringing. If they don't, it's some factors like Chaos lacking those sort of counters for like Beastmen, for example. Actually, Beastmen have Harpies.
Beastmen have RPs, but the thing is, Chaos really struggle because the throwing axemen actually their missiles are so slow that you can dodge with gyrocopters. It's obscene. Where they can fly around in a circle, and if you're not like having each horseman target a different gyrocopter, one can just run around a circle while the other two shoot your cavalry. It's very annoying.
Bringing gyrocopters is just like that sort of that risk of whether or not it works out in your favor or not. Same with gyro bombers.
I think one of the few factions that you can kind of get away with it because Chaos has to work. Chaos has to work
and
a lot
Norska,
harder
I'd say.
To get rid of them.
Chaos and Norska, fairly similar thing.
And Norska, I know Norska has Marauder javelins and throwing axemen. Javelins will bring.
Oh yeah, definitely javelins. But I don't know if you're bringing javelins just against dwarves. I don't know what you're doing there. If you're bringing hunters.
Even hunters.
Maybe throwing axes. Yeah, maybe hunters with throwing axes.
Yeah, the throwing axes will bring them down too. Like they have a lot of options because the problem with Chaos is that their flying core of manticores can't catch them, which is the main problem. But yeah, against Chaos, gyrocopters can actually be kind of a pain in the ass. Yeah. Especially if you keep them over your formation, run them out to use your bombs.
Run them
back.
Because
if you bring your cavalry close enough, you get shot. It's like
But yeah, very variable unit. Just think about what your opponent can bring to deal with them, and then bring them accordingly.
You wouldn't want to bring them against Empire because Empire will just shoot them out of the sky. Coast will shoot them out of the sky. Elves will shoot them out of the sky.
Any type of elves,
Even high elves. All elves will be able to shoot those things right out of the sky. It's just factions that have really weak missile.
Or flight superiority.
Or flight superiority.
Yeah.
Good old Luther Hartkin just pulls out his
pistol, just shoots one down, shoots the pilot in the head, takes him out, he goes down. Anyway, moving on to bolt throwers. With the artillery section of dwarves, bolt throwers are
okay.
Are they?
They're okay. They're anti-large and they are 550. They're fairly cheap.
I don't notice them do anything now.
Because no one uses them because you can just bring a cannon.
Or just bring like a unit of rangers. I'd bring over these guys on, frankly.
Yeah, like they're just
their damage output always seems really low to me.
Yeah, like I guess you could shoot at like the cannons themselves.
I don't think they have the range to outshoot artillery. Like they have an extra less than 100 range, so they're not going to win any artillery duels anytime soon.
Yeah, they won't win an artillery duel unless the map is very close. Like they could shoot cavalry.
Maybe.
I think they're meant to deal with cavalry. That's they're like they're. I think because the bolt throwers, most bolt throwers like.
Yeah, problem is though they have an arc of fire, which means they're not going to land as well as you would like them to. They're not going to go straight through units anytime. They're probably just going to land on a single model, which means they're probably more focused for like lower entity cavalry like demigryphs, or like
or
chaos knights or monstrous infantry and such.
Yeah, they want to shoot. Well, heavy cavalry is kind of what you want to shoot.
Yeah, but really really heavy cavalry probably.
Yeah, the slower ones around 70 speed.
Yes, frankly, not that good. Wouldn't recommend as a total artillery piece.
It's 550 gold. What do you expect?
I'd bring a ranger in.
You're getting what you're paying for.
Which ain't much. Grudge throwers though. Your pretty standard infantry sort of whittling down. It's a catapult. Yeah, it's a trebuchet. It's a.
You give it.
Yeah, it's a goblobber. It's a whatever, not a goblobber, a rock lobber.
It's a rock with a goblin.
Yeah, if you're throwing a rock, I don't think I need to tell you what happens when you throw a rock at things and why you want to throw rocks. It's pretty self-explanatory. You throw a rock at the infantry, it dies.
Yeah, with the Master Engineer though, it makes it into a
way more accurate.
ICBM just targets in on like a
those most elite units. Also makes them really good for sniping artillery. So it's like it's arguable that you don't need cannons if you bring grudge throwers with engineer.
Yeah, because the catapult, the grudge thrower functions similar to the play claw catapult in the fact that it will target the infantry section of the artillery piece rather than the cannon.
Which works just as well, especially if you're maxing out of that accuracy.
Because the key thing is, if you look at the leadership of the Dwarves at 64, where most factions' artillery tend to have really low leadership.
Really low, like 40 or something. So 64 is really high.
Yeah, they withstand a lot of damage, and they have 40 armor, which is still pretty good. Pretty good.
Now, onto the typical cannon. It's your typical cannon. It's basically, well, it's not quite your typical cannon because it's way better. It has 64 leadership again, and it has that shorter profile. It's a smaller target. Everything about it just makes it a better cannon, basically.
It's just better.
It's just a better cannon.
Hey, if you use that plus 12 charge bonus, though.
Oh yeah, you add that. You get 14 charge bonus on your cannon crew, so that you can get that 28 missile strength, 7 of which are armor piercing. But yeah, cannon. It's a pretty box standard cannon. There's not an awful lot to say with that. The goblobber is a grudge thrower which provides a discouraged effect, which again, when you talk about that play claw effect again, throwing that on enemy artillery, not to mention that because it's fully chevroned up, it means it's going to be way more accurate. It has 74 leadership itself, a fairly decent sniping of artillery thing again, similar to play claws.
Yeah,
because it has that discourage effect.
Mangonel.
Yeah.
Wait, does that mean it lands with multiple shots? Because that's usually how mangonels work.
No, I don't think so.
The thing would explode above the target and then shower stuff over it.
No, I think that's literally just talking about the leadership penalty.
Oh yeah, the leadership penalty. Okay.
But yeah, again, similar talking to the grudge thrower, it's a fairly decent shoot at hitting anything. I mean, it's not going to hit single entities anytime soon, but everything else it works well against.
If you're afraid of artillery, just bring that, and it'll kill them pretty easily.
It'll perform very well.
Unless it's like a fucking chaos cannon, a hell cannon.
Yeah, hell cannon or something which is going to break.
You might as well you want to destroy the cannon instead.
Yeah, for that you want to bring a cannon. So if you're dealing against chaos, then you want to bring cannons instead of grudge throwers usually.
Sometimes you'll be unlucky like me and only hit 2 out of 14 shots with warp lightning cannons. So
nice. Not to mention this one only has 5 less missile strength than the basic cannon, so it's basically just a cannon with discourage.
Yeah.
Organ guns.
They shoot a lot of rounds. They're pretty much like Hell Volley blaster guns.
Yeah, Hell Blaster volley guns.
Way more accurate, if I remember.
Yeah,
correctly.
they're basically Hell Blaster volley guns. It's a lot of money to be putting into one thing. At 1,100 is quite a bit.
And also really long range.
Yeah, 300 range is pretty good.
Unlike,
not quite as good as like
200 from the Hell Volley
Hell Blaster compared to Hell Blaster, it's really good, but still fairly short range relative to other artillery.
Like pretty much you're shooting at a cavalry mainly, because
you're shooting at cavalry or you're shooting at elite infantry. It's one or the other.
But it's excellent for mowing down cavalry and
elite infantry.
If you're or elite infantry. If you're dealing with like monstrous units or cavalry, especially cavalry, you bring one of those, and you can, if you're in any map that is flat enough or has a hill that you can sit on, you can shoot them on the way up, and they'll lose most of their cavalry unit before they reach you.
I don't think these do that much damage against single entities, though, do they? I could be wrong.
Don't. They do 300. Yeah,
it's not.
They don't really do a ton of damage, but if you run out of cavalry, the monstrous infantry isn't a bad choice.
No, and then like elite infantry after that, but then it's like if your opponent isn't bringing either 3 of those things, you're gonna probably notice this isn't gonna get its value back.
Yeah, it's not going to get its value back unless you shoot at a lord or something.
So it's a bit of a risky option again.
Well, I think organ guns are pretty much like a thunderer shot, but bigger. That's the other thing, is that it's hard to dodge.
Yeah, they move very quickly, so they are hard to dodge.
Unlike a cannon or the bolt thrower, you can't dodge. It's very unlikely you'll dodge this.
Yeah, dodge this.
Yeah.
Just blow out the sky.
But yeah, if you run out of cavalry, you don't really have any other elite units to shoot at other than then shoot at the lord. Just shoot the lord.
Yeah, more or less.
They'll either have to be stuck running around, barely dodging stuff, or run outside of its range.
Right. Anyway, last unit of the dwarf roster, the flame cannon, is a really short. No, it's terrible. Yeah, it's awful. Yeah. Its range is way too short. It's way too expensive. It's gonna die immediately as soon as something touches it, and it's just not gonna get its value.
I don't think I've ever seen a flame cannon be super powerful or useful.
It's really okay. Frankly, it is powerful, but it's not gonna get its value back. It's way too expensive for what it ends up doing. It's really good at killing those light infantry. Like, it'll destroy a unit of goblins like instantly, but so will blasting chargers, and so will iron drakes. There's way cheaper options that you don't need to put all your money into.
I feel like if they drop some of the missile strength and then some of its cost, it would be worth.
It might be worth it.
Yeah, it might be worth bringing, but
you make it like a single model thing that you can bring for like 500 gold or something. But how it is now, it's just not worth it.
Like, yeah, if you could bring a single model of it.
Because it's just like you've got better options. You've got like blasting charges and iron drakes. It's just not worth it.
Blasting charges, yeah, you might as well bring a unit iron drakes. It's cheaper and you get more shots.
Yeah, and you get a really good melee unit instead. These aren't worth it. Which what a poor note to end on for the dwarves. But alas.
The flamethrower guys. You could bring the flamethrower guys.
Iron drakes, yeah.
Iron drakes, yeah.
They perform way better. Yeah. But that is it for the dwarf roster. Moving on now to the vampire roster. Yes. Another pretty simplistic one.
You only have 20 minutes.
I got plenty of time. I can end it when I want.
With the 2 hour.
I end it when I want. We had one that went on for like 3 hours once. It's fine.
Yeah. So we'll be fine. We'll be fine.
Okay. If you want to do longer.
Yeah, I don't mind. Anyways, this is my roster, so shh. Shh.
Haha, seen you playing it in ages.
How dare you? Okay, Aranessa Assault Spike. The worst one, frankly. I'm sorry, Aranessa, but you're the worst one here. And the net's nice, but it doesn't affect flying, which is usually the problem that Vampire Coast can't deal with. Is the flying bits. So that doesn't help. Her buffs aren't helpful because they're more melee focused. The damage resist doesn't help that much. Her item gives, again, melee bonuses, which isn't what Vampire Coast does. So you can put her on a Roughing Prometheum, which helps her out with her defensive capabilities. Stat-wise, she's not doing anything special. She's your typical sort of anti-large lord that doesn't even perform that well because she has 20 armor, has a bit of physical resistance to make up for it, and of course can get that the buff from Milan's luck. But 3,200 health is not a lot, and it's
also a
really
unit that isn't undead. So
yeah, also not undead, so you can't revive. You can't regenerate her either, which is strange because I could have sworn she has regeneration in the army book. But she doesn't have it here for some reason.
It does, but it makes too much sense.
Yeah, she's meant to be like a mutant that has regeneration, but no regeneration here. She's not good. She's the worst of the Lord, frankly.
I think a ship is regeneration, but not.
Oh, is it? Oh, that might be it.
The infamous man himself.
Yeah, but moving on from the worst one, it's Luther Harkin. Boy, does he have a hand cannon and a half. That is a really good ability. Every time he hits, miscast chance and minus 10% physical resistance. That also applies to his melee attacks. Okay, I'm just going to skip to the formalities. You're putting him on his Terrorgeist. You're not putting him on foot. You're putting him on this, so he loses it on his melee attack there. But
whatever poor asshole you're up against and shoot their lord over and over again.
Yeah, you demolish him.
Unless you have air superiority or some sort of ranged unit to drive him back, he will just kill your lord.
Yeah. He has, when he's on his Terrorgeist, not only does he get regeneration, but you can also get the hunger, so he's going to regenerate so much on his own that you don't even need to bother healing him. He has 80 armor as Terrorgeist. His stats aren't great on the Terrorgeist, but the thing is when you put Hornswaggle on something, you're dropping its melee defense by 24, so you're probably guaranteed to hit it, especially when you throw in the charge bonus.
You're not gonna want to run him into combat because
until he runs out of ammo.
Yeah, until you run out of ammo. But remember, you got gunnery wights to solve that problem.
Yeah, you can just keep stock up on his ammo.
Like, he's also an opportunistic assassin, so if you have the chance to isolate like a single entity or something that you can kill quickly.
Yeah, a lord, anything, caster.
In general, you want to shoot stuff before you butter the bread up with shooting it.
Well, to be fair, I don't think. Well, whenever I play Chaos, Luther Arkin does not want to try and pick a fight with any of the legendary lords Chaos has. He wants to sit
he
and
just wants to shoot them
until they die.
Yeah.
Because if Archaon gets a hold of him, he will die.
Yeah, because he has that fire weakness with regeneration.
Also, word about the hunger is not regeneration, so you don't go in with fire weakness with through the hunger.
He does.
Oh, he does with the Terrorgeist.
It only does in melee. Yeah, but it's used on a Terrorgeist, so he gets like twice the regeneration. But it only works. The hunger only adds regeneration in melee.
Yes, that should be noted.
Yeah.
His abilities themselves, the Magical Void, not particularly useful. There is the unique situation of if you have this guy stand near your artillery, they can't get Siphon Leech sniped like at all, which is nice. The Power Siphon isn't too good. It's if you're worried about very specific abilities, you can bring it, but overall it's not too helpful. Probably worth dropping it for the 72 gold. Hornswaggle is a really good assassin ability. Dropping a bit of speed, 24 melee defense and armor. It's pretty good. No reason not really to bring it. Because even if you're not using it on a target that you're engaged with, you can drop it on any enemy. You can drop it on a frontline unit and it'll die quicker.
Yeah.
It's just quite helpful. And his item isn't too great. It's like you can just shoot the caster. You don't need to reduce its mana for 222 gold. Just shoot him and kill him.
Shoot him.
And then boom, no more mana for your opponent. Although it should be noted it does drain quite a bit of magic. So if you're worried about like Archaon maybe, I would recommend bringing this against Archaon. Or like a very good hybrid lord like Malekith or something like that.
Yeah.
Something that you can't just shoot.
Yeah, especially Archaon if he brings Fireball too and just yeets fireballs at you while you're flying.
Very good at draining those hybrid lords.
Yeah, you don't want them using their magic because their magic can actually bring him out of the sky sometimes.
Yeah.
If you're not careful.
All the benefits of a Terrorgeist when you put him on his Terrorgeist. And you also get a guy with an amazingly powerful gun. And also, it should be noted that when he's on a Terrorgeist, he also gets Death Streaks, which just means he's going to rain even more damage from above. Yeah. So yeah, really, really good lord. Definitely second place, I'd say. He did get nerfed though, so he would have been tied for first with Noctilus, but no, Noctilus is first.
They downgraded his op to just a Deagle.
Yeah, and he took it. No, he halved his mag size, wasn't it? That was it.
Yeah, they have the mag size. That's.
Yeah, they turned it down from a drum barrel to like a single clip.
From fucking 50. I felt like 50 ammunition.
Yeah, 50. It's obscene. Yeah, they didn't even need to recharge. He had 50 bullets of that much weapon strength, missile strength.
Legit, he could kill your entire leadership corps by just sitting and shooting and never engaging anything. 30 is still a lot, no matter.
Yeah, now you actually have to bring a gunnery wight with him. That's the exception, basically.
That's the downside. Oh no.
Moving on to the spooky ghost lady, Celestia Diaphin. Access to the lore of deeps. Do you know what time it means? That means we get to cover the new lore. Woohoo! Let's have a look. See here. All right, Spiteful Shot. Yeah, you're really only bringing this when you're worried about ethereal units, because Vampire Coast don't have access to that much magical damage. So if you're worried about ethereal units, then you want to bring this one.
90 accuracy is not that bad.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, but it's mainly for the magical damage you're bringing it.
Well, that's 4 magic though. Like you could totally toss that on like a random cannon.
Although to be fair, cannons are frankly pretty good.
Cooldown and.
If you're worried that much about accuracy, then you just bring a gunnery wight.
I guess. But what's the upgraded version? I'm curious.
Extended effect duration of special. Lasts longer for 2 more winter magic. Tidecall is your typical breath ability. Comes with a slowdown effect, which is quite handy for Vampire Coast, of course, because you want to slow them down before they reach the front line. Good for clearing out those sort of typical like low armor damage dealer front lines that you'll see brought against Vampire Coast. So I'd say it's worth bringing most of the time, especially because of the passive ability that Lore of Deep has. Overcasting it just increases its armor piercing effect. Fog of the Damned, pretty surprisingly good. Overcasted, it gives an area of effect minus 40 melee attack. That really makes everything in that area not do anything. For 11 that went to magic, that's pretty decent.
It's like Brittle Bone, but just better.
But it's melee attack instead of melee defense.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. So, yeah, melee attack is melee. For a second, I thought it was melee defense.
Yeah,
Wait,
no, it's melee attack. So it basically just
it's like melee
drops.
defense minus leadership. It's like, man, that's really good.
Yeah, so if you go for really like
magic,
tight formation, this sort of spell can be really good. But it definitely has its situations. A summon, pretty good. Denizens of the Deep, being able to summon Rotting Prometheans is really good. I mean, they are more of a defensive unit again, which is not something you want in summons, but Rotting Prometheans will definitely defend that position for a really long time. They won't run away because they're undead.
Cannons or something.
Yeah, anything like that.
They also large targets, so they can actually trap like charging cavalry, charging monsters. They can
really efficiently absorb a charge.
Yeah, they can also summon in from behind, tie them in, and then if
you got like spell in the lore, you always want that.
Always want to bring this one. Yeah, it's the best. This is definitely the best one in the lore. Kraken's Pull is very similar to the Eshin one. It's basically a stationary vortex. It's not as good as Pit of Shades. It's just a slow, constant damage, and it also provides like minus 50% speed. Overcasting it just increases the duration. It's not. It's probably one of the worst vortex spells out there. It's not good.
Because at least the Eshin one actually does quite a bit of damage.
Yeah, but this one only slows them. It doesn't sort of suck them in anything or move them around the place.
Yeah, it doesn't pull them in. Yeah, like the other one.
Vangeist's Revenge. Yeah,
it's probably highest damage wind spell.
Yeah, it's a huge amount of damage. The only problem is it takes like 5 years to cast.
Unlike Wind of Death.
Yeah, it's basically you took everything good about Wind of Death, then took it away, and now you're just left with a really high damage spell that you would literally have to have your game freeze up in order for you to miss. Yeah. It takes that long to appear.
Points for it though, because look at that, it's absolutely.
It looks amazing, but it takes too long to be efficient. Unfortunately, I would never recommend bringing this spell. There's the meme that you can bring Aranessa with a net and then net something down and kill it with this spell. But you first of all, you bring in the worst lord. Second of all, you're spending 16 winds of magic. Third of all, you need the micro to do it. It's not worth it. Just don't ignore the spell existence. Maybe one day it'll be good when they buff it or something. Hopefully, I don't know. It looks too cool for it to be so bad.
Well, I guess it isn't bad. How much is its wind up time? 7
seconds. It's quite a while.
7 seconds.
7 seconds.
Time, and I think.
And then it has the animation. It's like another 4 seconds at least.
Longer.
It's really bad.
Yeah, it's literally during the 7 seconds. I'm happening. Like Winds of Death or some other spells where.
It does it instantly.
Winds of Death doesn't even have.
No, it doesn't even have an animation or anything. It just goes as soon as it sees it.
Yeah, it doesn't. No, it doesn't have a sound.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, no, and that has a really loud sound, by the way. So you're gonna not miss that anytime. The passive effect for the Lord of the Deep is alright. Oh. It causes a little bit of damage basically every time you cast.
So you could just use that 90 accuracy thing.
Just over and over again. I mean, maybe you can whittle down. I'm not sure it does that much damage though. So it's not the greatest passive, but it damages damage.
Probably test it out though. See how much damage you actually do.
Should check that. Although actually, Warhammer 3 will be able to see how much damage it does because it will actually show damage numbers, won't it?
Tell.
So we'll wait until Warhammer 3 till we see. But Celestia, Diafin, she is an ethereal caster unit, which is very unique because typical casters die really quickly, but because of it, she's ethereal. She has that 75% physical resistance. That doesn't mean she's not going to die though. She still dies quite quickly. But
it's the time for the witch hunter to shine.
Yeah, this is the time when bang, instantly half a health gone. No, it's not that bad, but it is bad.
Well, he does have 300 like magical missile damage, so he
it's a really good chunk, that's for sure. But Celestia is you can put her on a Rotting Leviathan. We'll talk about those later, which it definitely increases her survivability a lot more, but makes her then more vulnerable to missiles. When she's on foot, she's a lot harder to sort of catch because she has a fairly decent speed plus Strider because she's ethereal.
Physical resistance still though. While on it.
Not full 75% though. It gets reduced to 10%.
Yeah. Okay, but that's still.
That would be hilarious.
Ethereal giant Rotting Leviathan, dear God. Yeah. She comes with a really good casting iron, by the way. This is a really good for recharge rate and for ability recharging. It's a really good casting thing. The only problem is, speaking of which, abilities as well. She comes with Song of Enthrallment, which is a AOE minus 24 melee attack and minus 50% speed, which.
That's not
it's
bad.
not. That's definitely not terrible.
It's really awesome.
Because it's putting her on foot. means she can not only get away from whatever's trying to catch her, but she's probably not going to get hit. And even if she does get hit, she's got that 75% physical resistance. So it definitely helps with the survivability quite a bit. But one of the key things about Celestra is that she can summon a unit of Damned Knights Errant, which Vampire Coast don't have any cavalry, so being able to summon a unit of cavalry is pretty good. Especially when the main weakness to Vampire Coast is like archers. So being able to summon one of these into the back line and just destroy all the archers, because they're an ethereal unit, so they're going to cause terror as well. So you just terror them off and then chase them off with like hounds.
If she's on her Rotting Promethean, just walks
just gonna get a drink back
through whatever chaff, summon the unit, and then just start bouncing it between the archer units, probably.
Yeah, it's a good, like, I think there was one tactic that Willow, I think it was actually one of the builds that Willow came up with, like, probably the only build that Willow ever came up with, except using her on foot against, like, orcs, and just taking her literally for the summon, and then cast a summon and basically run her around. She's a cheap causing shit, and the Knights Errant basically delete the orc archers.
So
they just, like, ethereal damage. Ethereal magical damage, delete like what are they? The Savage Orc archers, and they just run around in the backline, terror out everything, and then
it is only a one.
Don't have to worry about archers anymore.
Yeah, it's just a one summon, but she has a definitely very unique situations that she can. Well, not very unique. She's pretty good all round it. But the only thing that's keeping her back is that it's Lore of the Deep, because frankly, Lore of Vampires is the best lore in the game, especially for Vampire Coast. It's just Lore of the Deep isn't as good.
You could probably bring some of the spells at least.
Yeah, maybe like
just to summon the Prometheans and the item for her.
One isn't bad.
Maybe no, but it's like no. Honestly, I just bring like Lore of Vampires. It's just Lore of Vampires is just so good that you'd rather be using your magic on these summons and these healings instead.
Like if you're gonna use the Vampire Caster anyway, so you like probably have to take both of them, which is expensive because the Vampire Caster is like 1200 if you take a reasonable kit, and Celestra is like Deep Caster 1500 probably if you want to like get the Promethean summon and maybe like an item or something.
I don't even.
So you're paying a lot of shit for magic alone.
Yeah. Like I guess you could probably bring just the Promethean summon and then the Vampire Caster with the heal and the zombies.
Yeah, and the I think I've used like sometimes just in more meme or more fun games Celestra with the Promethean, her item and the summon spell, so she has a bit of magic resistance, and then the Vampire Caster with the Power Stone, and then you have like enough magic to use like at least the summons and a bit of healing, but you're still strapped for magic.
Yeah,
because you don't have necromancers with forbidden rocks.
No, you don't.
Apparently all different types of vampire, Captain.
Yeah. These are all tied for second to worst, only beating out Aranessa by a little bit. I believe they all have the same items.
Have magic.
Yeah. Oh no, they don't actually. It's different for each lore, is it? Is that it? No, it's not. It's different for if the pistol ones, the pistol variant and the polearm variant have different things.
Yeah.
So basically, you have a pistol variant which can shoot, and you have a polearm variant which is anti-large.
And more melee defense.
And that's the difference.
Yeah, the item difference is the
let's see. Wand of Jet. Wand of Jet's pretty good.
It's nice,
Wand of Jet is like a must-take item for 44 magic. Yeah. 44 gold.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Then Spectrum, that's your AoE of enfeebling foe for you. That's like a Helmet Discord basically.
Yep.
Not quite as long of a casting.
Around itself, it's not as long, but still as good. Because it does the minus 30 base damage, which is good against the unarmored Vampire Coast.
It doesn't tie into the damage, into the roster that good,
no,
because you don't
it's a melee
normally have the burst damage of the
of the counts to be able to make full efficiency of that.
The alpha strike ability of the counts with Blood Knights, you don't have that, so it's kind of...
Yeah, most of your damage is focused on like guns and whittling stuff down.
I could probably see it as a defensive tool, pretty much, to survive.
But you don't need like 16 seconds defensive tool makes your front line hold exactly 60 seconds longer.
No, I mean
not even 60 seconds, probably like 12.
As in help, I don't want to die, running away sort of scenario.
Yeah, 24 melee attack isn't quite as much to help out most coaches.
Yeah, depends how much it's worth. How much gold is it?
100 something, like 105.
105.
That's not.
So if you take more abilities. Actually, a thing to notice, if you take more abilities and items, the prices go down a little bit. Yeah, prices
go up. Also, All Hands Ahoy is terrible because, again, it's a melee-focused thing for Vampire Coast. Yeah, they go up. Yeah, getting rid of. Yeah, when I get rid of all hands ahoy, it goes up to 112.
Goes up by like 7 gold. You save 7 gold if you take 1 more ability. That is shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so it's a bit difficult to have like fixed prices for that. So it's around 100. Just
the the Polearm variant. Oh no, not the pistol variant. Comes with Black Parapet, which is basically just a really good arcane conduit.
Yeah.
It's a pretty strong arcane conduit, and also an opal amulet.
Arcane conduit.
But also, all the generic ones can be put on crab mounts. But frankly, they're the second worst one. And like, they're good and all, but you just bring Noctilus. It's Noctilus. You bring Noctilus. He gets.
If you go for Noctilus. Like kind of like a box build, then you sometimes don't take Noctilus because you have to walk away with him.
It depends what you're putting him on. What are you doing with it?
But normally, like if you're going for a box, I think you normally take a Wrathing Promethean mount for a normal vampire cast because he's cheaper. He has decent melee stats on the Wrathing Promethean, and he's more difficult to kill than Noctilus is. And if you put him on, if Noctilus on his Necrophax Colossus, he's a giant target.
He's a big old target. But again, it is like the regular Necrophax Colossus is 1,900. And you're getting one for 700 in this case, which is a huge cost decrease, which probably makes it worth it most of the time. Unless you're really worried about him being a target, it makes him worth it like a lot of the time. He gets access to the passives for both shadows and vampires. You don't really need the shadow ones because it's just a speed buff. Hunger, again, really good because it's regen whenever he's in melee. Arcane Conduit, always want Arcane Conduit on your caster. Raststorm, it has a varying. I'd say it's worth taking most of the time. Its damage can sometimes vary, but it is. But if you get onto a good clumped up unit, it basically does the damage of like a Searing Doom, which is when you get 3 charges of it and it costs only 105 gold. No Winds of Magic. I'd say it's worth taking almost all the time. Gets access to the 2 only spells that you need, being Drown Dead and Invocation of the Heck. That's really all you ever need. It should be noted now that one thing we forgot to mention. The Vampire Summon, as opposed to summoning a regular unit of zombies, which would be for Vampire Count Lord Vampires, these can summon a unit of Deckhand Mob. But overcasted, it will, if we click on it, won't click on it. Can I look at it?
Click.
If I look at it. Oh, there it is. Yeah, so overcasting, it will summon a unit of Gunnery Mob, which being able to summon a ranged unit is really good, it turns out.
And armor piercing.
It's not an armor piercing.
Oh, it's
no,
not
it's a pistol variant.
Okay.
It does a decent amount of armor piercing, but summon that, shoot at something flying that's annoying you, and
yeah, just summon one of the. Because the thing is you summon this unit like behind the enemy line or something, and they fire into the backs. They fire at the flying unit in the air. They fire at the lightly armored caster. They don't want to engage them because it's a summon, but they don't want to just ignore them because they're shooting at them. So like, it's an amazingly good summon.
Well, whenever I would like face cosplayers with my Forsaken build, I didn't really care about the spell because I just run Forsaken in and then they evaporate and then just move it to the next summoned unit. Like there's some times that you don't bother wanting to use it because you might want another spell that might do damage because you don't want to run into the scenario that if the person has rush infantry that can clear through chaff really quickly, you don't want to try and use that spell on them because they just might decide, how about I just kill that and then come back and then kill your front line?
The ideal situation is you summon it somewhere that you really don't want, that you want them to rush to. So like you force them down to a certain way, or you force them to turn around while the rest of your ranged units shoot them in the back.
Yeah.
Something like that. It's a really valuable summon. It's probably the best summon in the game, question mark? I'd say so.
Being able to summon a ranged unit, yeah.
Especially with the volume of fire you can provide, it's really good. You can pair that with like a taunt to drop armor, so it basically makes it an armor piercing unit because all the vampire casters will get like Hornswaggle or taunt or something like that.
Yeah, doesn't he? Yeah.
Noctis does a bad scenario, but he does get the withering, so you can drop armor in some ways.
Oh yeah. Drop with the withering.
So yeah, very powerful summon. Really good. Overcasting it, pretty much 90% of the time you want to overcast it. And of course, Invocation of the Heck is an amazing heal. And also, he gets even more summons. This is just the melee infantry, but again, summonings are just amazing. And he gets 2 summons free of Winds of Magic. You just need to summon these in the back line, summon these to tie up a unit. Just really, summons are amazing. And this guy gets a lot of them.
To point out that these summons have 150-meter range, as opposed to, I think, the 50-meter that you get from the spell.
Yeah, so you can summon these a lot further away.
You summon them on artillery that's like on Giselles or something that's really far away, and the opponent thinks they're safe, but bam, summon.
Better not, because you can summon them up.
It's also 3 seconds, so it's a pretty short duration.
Yeah, they summon up real quick.
I don't know how long the spell is, but I think the spell is slightly longer. So
there's been some things where Noctilus being just put on foot instead of his big monster.
Oh yeah, there's definitely a situation for both. If you're going up against like a very ranged heavy, you probably want to put them on foot. In fact, against like ranged heavy factions, I think Noctilus on foot is the preferred choice because Luthor and his thing will die anyway. So you just bring Noctilus on foot because he's a relatively good target. It's got 95 armor and 15% missile resistance on foot, so he's kind of hard to hit. And on his neck effects is really good. Yeah, anti-large armor piercing. 60 melee defense means he's really hard to snipe. He's not exactly a hybrid lord because he's not amazing in melee, but he's a really sturdy caster.
Yeah, he'll survive. That's the key thing.
He's not going to die quickly anytime soon.
He's not a hybrid in the sense that he can beat up other weaker lords. It's just he can survive pretty well. He doesn't. You don't want him to get caught though and stuck in combat.
No, you want him chilling in the back line with the rest because he's got all these summons he needs to get out before he dies.
Yep, and use all that magic he's got.
Now onto the hero core, Gunnery White. Pretty similar to the old Master Engineer, basically. It comes with a grenade. It's useless. Don't bother bringing it. Both grenade. In fact, it comes two grenade abilities: the Cackle Fruit and the Bomb Throw. Both pretty bad. I wouldn't bother. Comes with enhanced, but I believe that's exactly the same as the Master Engineer, so we don't need to talk about that one.
Yeah.
This one is also, as opposed to being the explosive damage buff, it's just base missile damage for that one, and also comes with again a Scab Scraper Breath ability on the range support. So very similar role to the old Master Engineer, but this guy is insanely better because he can replenish ammo, which is really good for some of the lacking in ammo units. That because you often find if you run out of ammo as a vampire count unit, it's a vampire coast unit. It's useless. It's entirely useless. Like the missile units in the vampire coast roster basically have no stats, so they are entirely useless outside of their ranged weapon. So being able to replenish that 4 times for pretty much free is really good. There is very few times that you're not going to want to bring a Gunnery White, or at least 2 Gunnery Whites. Not to mention that he's a really good sniper.
Yeah.
Another thing to point out that all Vampire Coast missile units will get a damage buff if they're above 80% 80% remaining powder. It's called extra powder.
Yeah, extra powder.
Like if it drops, you have like a 30% buff, so you use that to always keep above 80%. Like don't wait until the unit is exhausted. Just
pop it.
Really low on ammo. Just slap it on if it's like under 80%. Bam, full ammo again.
Yeah.
We'll get the 30% buff.
Maximize that damage.
What you usually do with the current coast meta Gunnery White is you basically take 2, you put them on the crabs because then they have amazing armor piercing values, and you basically use that as a mobile sniper base to snipe lords, to snipe anything that's large. And also, if you need them, you throw them into melee. They give each other powder, so they will never run out of ammo. And you just basically make your opponent rage quit after some time because it's
after
annoying
you kill all their lords.
Because you just throw all the summons with Noctilus in between them.
Yes, and that's like basically an unkillable trio. Like nobody, you're not gonna get through that anytime soon.
But
no,
I just realized that Coast literally has just a better version of extra powder that every other gunpowder faction gets.
Yeah. Way better version.
It's like the only faction that can replenish ammo.
Yeah, I think, is it?
Yeah, it's the only faction. It's the only faction that can replenish ammo.
That might be. Yeah, I think it is. Yeah. Could have sworn it was a unique unit that got ammo replenishment. No, I guess not.
The ROR Biggin.
Oh yeah, but yeah, the ROR Biggin. No, that'll be the one that has ammo replenishment. I also used to think the ROI Hell Cannon had ammo replenishment, but it doesn't. It just fires quicker whenever things are in range.
Just has a huge amount of ammo.
Now onto a terrible part of the roster, it's the Mongol Haunter. This guy is basically... He's a very bad Vargulf. He's a Vargulf without regeneration, more or less. That's what he is. Which basically makes him only good against Skaven. And that's it. His abilities are very generic. His items are literally useless, like -8 this to flying units, a potion of strength that only gets 1 use. His stats are pretty bad. His anti-infantry is 25, so he's pretty good at clearing like infantry stuff. Again, why he's good against Skaven. but he's basically only good against Skaven. 40 armor means he's going to get shredded by like missiles, which you'll probably see a lot of against dwarves, so don't think about bringing him against dwarves because rangers will demolish him. He has a stalk, but again, he's going to get demolished as soon as he gets seen. So yeah, he's pretty bad. He is very fragile and not very good in terms of damage output either. His ideal situation is like clearing out infantry, but that's it. Like if he goes up against literally anything else, he'll die. Not to mention that even infantry will kill him because again, only 40 armor, so he's going to die fairly quickly. He only has 38 melee defense. If he gets surrounded, he's going to take damage really quickly, and he's got no regeneration. Well, he actually has the hunger, but no regeneration, so he's not going to passively regenerate. So again, he has to stay in melee. You know, the melee where he only has 30 melee defense and 40 armor. So he's not good. The casters, they're your typical vampire hero casters. There's not that much to say about them particularly. You almost always bring in the Law of Death one, or Law of Vampires, and the Power Stone is of course something you want to bring. It should be noted that these are really expensive for like casters, relative to like other ones available. They also all get access to Taunt, which is the exact same as Luther Harkin's Hornswaggle ability, and it's really good. I'd recommend bringing it all the time because even if you don't want to use it on a specific thing, you can just drop it on a frontline unit and really reduce its stats. So I'd recommend bringing that pretty much all the time. Moving on to the base infantry of the Vampire Coast. Zombie Pirate Deckhand Mob. Yeah, they're chaff. These are your typical skeleton, typical clan rat chaff unit. It's what your frontline is going to be literally all the time. You're not going to get a different frontline. Even the polearm unit probably isn't worth bringing as a frontline because they're just there for chaff. There isn't an awful lot special about them. They have a really large amount of health. They've got a huge amount of models. They're meat shield. The aquaticness has no real effect whatsoever because they're not going to be doing any damage anyway. They only have 17 and 15. They're a full chaff unit. The polearm unit is a bit better in the fact that it's actually not got really the stats to defeat a large monster anytime soon, but its existence is enough to ward away like large entities and such. So like putting them on the back line, putting them near your cavalry, putting them near your ranged units, they're unlikely to like be engaged by those sort of things. They're really good for warding off the things you don't want to come near your ranged units. But I wouldn't recommend bringing them as a front line because they'll do even worse against their infantry. And they're 100 gold extra, which you can like 3 of these or 4 of these. You'd much rather bring the 4 than the 3. The ROR Deckhand Mobs, the Tide of Skuld, the same thing, but they get a little bit of extra leadership with their Perfect Vigor because of their rarity effect, which means they'll fight. You know, peak capacity is like implying they were good to begin with, so they're fighting at a constant level basically.
Wait, do they get an extra 30 models like the Tithe?
No, they don't.
No, they don't get.
They're only they get their typical Chevron buffs and they get Frenzy and Rowdy, which makes them like half decent infantry. But again, they're more just chaff focused.
It's like 150 more gold for a unit that's actually functional rather than dog shit.
It's like you bring it when you want to.
When you have gold to spare and wanna like flex on your opponent.
Yeah, it's like 150 gold extra, but even then it's like you really have to run out of options. Like you really have to be like, oh, yeah, okay, there's nothing else I can spend my gold on. It's better than chevroning up something, but that's about it.
Yeah, but at that point you might as well just bring another unit.
Yeah, you can bring
it out for a better version.
More than likely, but this is like your last option. It's not a terrible option, but it's not something you should rush to do.
It's better than at least most chaff, and the frenzy will actually push it to the ability to kill weaker like basic infantry. Like basic infantry, so it's not.
But that's about it.
Again,
it's zombies.
It's still zombies. Still zombies.
That can't shoot.
Now the Sirens, oh spooky! They are unique in the fact they're an typical ethereal infantry unit. Not great stat wise. They come with the Charmed effect, which means everything they hit loses 9 melee attack, which makes them a very much defensive focused faction. You can basically think of them having 41 melee defense because of that. They also come with armor piercing, but again they only have the 23 melee attacks, so they're not much of a damage output thing. Yeah, pretty much a very defensive thing. They perform fairly well against like no, they perform pretty well against like heavy cav and such because of the armor piercing and because they can't get walked through very easily at all. Like their ethereal models are really awkward. Like I can never seem to push past them, like with anything. They're surprisingly good at like holding onto things.
They got all like thrown to the ground.
I've noticed we've lost a couple of viewers after we finished the dwarves.
No, yeah, nobody knows to see the vampire
the only interesting faction
was the dwarf, right? Yeah. But yeah, Sirens, they're pretty good as like a backline unit because of their speed. 48 speed is pretty fast compared to everything else in the roster, or just on the flanks.
Basically, a path replacement.
Yeah, more or less. They also come with Fear and Terror, which typical of the ethereal units, but you don't really make use of it much on an infantry unit. To be frank, you're not really bringing them for the Fear and Terror in this situation, which is a shame because that's probably where a lot of their cost goes.
Actually, you might be able to use them against factions with like really bad magic to defend against them.
Something against like
I know if you're against dwarves, they have a real tough time because they don't naturally have magic damage. But that's what the ring is for.
They also drop the melee attack by 9, so they do really drop like melee attack.
It makes the dwarves actually just can't kill them because their melee defense is way too high.
It should be noted that Sirens perform pretty badly against other ethereal units because of their low melee attack.
Yeah.
Now moving on to a unit I wish was better. I mean, it's all right now. I think Lycus has something to say about this.
It's been buffed. It's been
buffed.
Oh yes.
Death Guard. Go ahead, Lycus.
Okay, so the Death Guard. They are like actually still strange. They're basically really, really expensive chaff clearer. Like they will melt any lowly armored chaff, like Crypt Ghouls, for example. They will kill them. They also have regenerate, like the Hunger. So basically, they are vampires. So they regenerate without having a fire weakness. They also have Frenzy. So if their leadership is high, they get a huge damage buff. They have an insane amount of weapon strength, but they suffer from the Chosen syndrome of having like basically no models.
Actually.
I mean, they're better. They're worse than Chosen. Like, let's face it.
Yeah. I was gonna point out. It's like let's compare them to actual Chosen.
They also have like really shitty melee defense. So as Willow was pointing out a second ago, so they will take damage. They will usually like circumvent that if you need, like if you heal them and if they do their frenzy. But they're really expensive what they do. They have been buffed, so they are like decent now.
Well, I think it's because they gave them hunger. Once they gave them
the hunger was always there. The hunger was there since the start. Okay. But they like with the changes to infantry models, they are like performing better now than they were before.
Yeah. But
it's a weird spot. Like I like them really a lot, and I think I see like for example Anticity, who's a really high level coast player. He uses them, for example, in a build against dwarfs. But like you never want to fight against dwarfs. They do decent against dwarf armor actually. Like they kill longbeards really easily.
Well, because their weapon strength is so high.
Yes, but that's like still you don't want to fight dwarfs with coast, so it's a weird spot.
Well, okay, the reason why it's probably they're useful against the longbeards is because of the fact that they're regenerating and the dwarves don't do damage that quickly.
Yeah, especially with 90 armor, they don't.
They just don't die.
Like who's bringing armor piercing against Vampire Coast? Especially as dwarves. Yeah. We're gonna bring longbeards great weapons. They're gonna get shot to pieces.
Yeah, they're gonna get shot to pieces, or they're just gonna get chewed up by these guys with 50 melee attack. Because I just did the little math, and each model has 109 hit points, which is technically lower than Chosen. But the thing is, Chosen don't heal.
Yeah, so these are basically just like I said, really expensive chaff clearers. But that's mainly their only like existence. They don't really perform well against any other situation.
You don't want
I think
them
they perform decent against like vampire counts where you're not afraid of getting shot.
Counts.
Yeah,
I think are good. Like they're, as I said, they're good against dwarfs. I will show you. I think a build that does decent against dwarfs, but I think against empire as well because they kill flagellants. But like those are the factions that you don't want to necessarily face as coast.
Yeah, it's like all the worst situations.
Against your hard counters, they are probably not the worst unit to take.
Maybe against Norsca as well.
Usually, if you're taking them, you're facing factions that are supposed to counter you.
Anyway, I think that's basically it.
They contrast quite differently with the Poland variant that they are, which is basically the complete opposite. They're not a chaff clearer in the slightest. They are kind of weird. I don't think they're very good.
Anti-large. They're the Poland.
They're basically the Poland variant, but they have like no models, so they can just get walked through, which is the problem.
Yeah, actually, Actually, when I think about it, because of their frenzy, they still have 50 melee attack.
Yeah, they still have pretty good melee attack. It's just they've got a weapon strength debuff and a melee defense buff, more or less.
Yeah. Which,
I think
again,
the polearms are now like not good, but you sometimes use them if you need like something to kill. If you're sure the enemy is gonna come for you, I think against Bretonia they're like useful.
Yeah, against Bretonia,
because
yeah,
the cavalry has to come for you, and they actually, as
Or
opposed to
Blood
the
Knights.
zombies, actually kill the knights. But
actually, against Blood Knights and Vampire counts wouldn't be a bad idea to bring them.
I mean, the whole thing is
If
they'll completely destroy the thing that they kind of go for. It's just like they're not that fast, so they're not going to catch them.
It's a scenario of they can also get shot to pieces.
Yeah, and also like they'll probably not perform great against like
Yeah, and any faction that has an
single
artillery
entities.
piece will destroy their ass because their health is too low to withstand the explosive damage from most cannons. Or well, it's high enough to take 1 or 2 shots, but collectively or just with missiles, they will not survive.
Yeah, the case is pretty similar with the Bloody Reaver deckhand. They come with the Enrage ability, which allows for a temporary buff to their damage resistance by 44%, but that's not really protecting them from consistent like artillery fire or ranged fire. It's helping them when they're in melee, but they're already winning when they're in melee most of the time because they're amazing stats. Yeah. So it's not a huge help most of the time. Like when it helps them with single entities, so they can't just get like cycle charged as easily or run through, by like mammoths and such. But that's about it.
What's that little text thing that came when I was on Enraged?
Oh yeah, Enraged. Oh yeah, you really don't want to make them angry. No, really.
No, really.
Really. No, seriously, don't.
They're very hungry. Don't. Stop.
They'll eat you.
They're gonna post cringe.
Well, that's it for the infantry section. Well, melee infantry. Moving on to the missile infantry, of course. This is where they shine because of their well, it used to be they had huge volume of fire, but they got changed.
Yeah, they got changed so they're not broken.
Zombie pirate gunnery mob. They're really quick firing, not low strength, non-armor piercing. You fire at these things at basically anything that has low armor. The sheer volume of fire will be enough to do like really good damage. They have short range, so there's a reason these things are ideal as a summon.
But also they're only 300 gold, so...
Yeah, they're only 300 gold. They're the same price as the main one.
The idea is, it's not how far does the bullet penetrate, it's how many can you shoot.
Yeah, how many can you shoot? It's not about accuracy, it's just shoot as many as you can and hope that at least half of them hit.
Yeah,
Skaven Slave Slingers, basically.
Yeah, except for the way more damage output than Skaven Slave Slingers. But trade off for no arc of fire and range.
They don't run away.
Skaven Slave Slingers win.
Yeah.
Yeah, but really good against like single entities like manticores or casters or like those single entities that are lightly armored. They'll just melt.
Let's not forget the plus 30% missile damage they get from extra powder.
Yeah, extra, which means 30% isn't too much on 15, but
that's still like
4.5.
Almost 5 missile
damage. Yeah, 5 missile damage.
5 extra missile damage is
pretty decent.
Impressive. Yeah, that's 20. That's pretty much the damage of a crossbow.
Yeah, again, that's why it works as well as a summon because they rarely get down to below 80% as a summon. They usually fire off before they get to 80% ammunition. So yeah, for 300 gold, a really good unit.
Yeah.
But like, they don't quite have the range sometimes. So they work much better as a summon. Bombers. Yeah, it's time to talk about gunnery mob bombers. They are basically blasting charges, but with more blasting charges. They clear chaff.
Damage.
Yeah, basically, yeah. They don't kill things quite as quickly as blasting charges do. But they make up for it because they have more volleys, so they can fire more often. They're very good at clearing chaff, more or less. They're very good at clearing lightly armored infantry.
Like I could see, like you could bring 1 or maybe 2.
Yeah, one or 2 pretty much. I'd say nearly on every build you want 1 or 2. Get a bomber unit just to clear out chaff. Like a unit of spearmen, as high of spearmen, you'll kill in 2 volleys.
Yeah, unless they bring like a big front line of armored stuff, and it's like,
yeah, that's the thing there. But still, they will do probably decent damage over time.
Yeah.
If they get all their volley stuff.
And also, you don't really care if you're throwing into your deckhand mob either, so it's like, it's the perfect situation, frankly. They work very well. I'd recommend bringing them in nearly every roster. The gunnery mob with handguns are basically the armor-piercing and longer-ranged variant of the pistol variant. Although they do fire slower, unfortunately, and they don't have the fire spots moving, so they don't fire quite as quickly, but they make up for it being able to fire for longer, and that means they could also they have armor piercing.
Yeah, and also they get that extra, 6 damage.
Yeah, but also the extra 30%, which is pretty decent. It's your typical handgun unit.
That's one thing you gotta take into account, when thinking about Coast, is that they all their range units get 30% more for
the first couple volleys,
which is about 4 shots. I think is 80%.
Yeah,
is 20%
probably about,
of their.
Yeah, about 4.
Yeah, first 3 or 4 volleys, which are usually the most important before they it's pretty much the exact amount of volleys you'll probably get off before your range units will get stuck in melee.
Yes, you almost always get full usage of your ability.
Yeah, so.
But yeah, typical handgun unit, really strong at dealing with single entities and such, like big dragons, monstrous infantry, elite heavy cavalry, or just like some unshielded armored infantry, even just like typical handgun unit, more or less. Now,
good tactic, which is kind of falling out of favor with the handgun mobs, has been to basically use like 4 or 5 of those, put them in square formation in the back line,
and do like a checkered formation,
kind of in a checkboard, and then they cover each other. Because as opposed to like most other ranged targets, those guys are not gonna run.
No.
So if a cav charges into them, you turn 3 units around, you shoot them to pieces, the cav unit to pieces. You might maybe lose like 1 unit, but that's about it. And most of the time you won't even lose 1 unit, but that does not work as good anymore because of the changes to HP and everything. Yeah. So you see it less and less.
When they're in that tight box formation, it means they can turn a lot quicker, which works out.
Yeah, and that's also the use of the box formation. It's kind of like the medieval, or not medieval, Renaissance pike and shot tactic.
It's pretty much the tertio square.
Yeah. Hand cannons.
Okay, Willow, you gotta be real with me. What are they used for? I've seen them only once
I'll let you know,
and they've never been useful.
You hear this, right? They're terrible. Don't.
They show up and then they just
don't do anything. I'm not even going to talk about them. They're bad. Don't bring them. Okay, moving on.
Just switch to the next one.
They're gunners.
Somebody's gonna be
pretty good. They're like your typical sort of middle. I don't know what to call this sort of like Jezzails. They're like Vasomotor Jezzails.
They are Jezzails.
They are Jezzails. Yeah, they're basically Jezzails. They're not quite as good as Jezzails, I don't think, though.
Yeah, they don't have armor or shield.
No.
So, but
they come with that shield breaker. They come with that good missile strength. They come with that pretty good range.
30% more damage.
I don't think they quite have the range of Jezzails either.
No, they have
it's
similar
like
range.
25 less.
25 less, yeah.
Which
Jezzails have 270.
Yeah, but use these for the typical same things you're using for Jezzails, for like picking off monstrous infantry, firing at like cavalry, basically just like miniature cannons, basically, more or less. I don't think they're quite as good at sniping artillery though, because they can't get into range as easily. It depends on the map situation, but typically you're not using them to snipe artillery as often. Using them to snipe off like those casters, the Lord, the single entities, they're snipers. What else can you say?
Yeah, and their first bunch of volleys, extra 15 damage.
Yeah, an extra a huge amount of extra 15 damage on all those first volleys. So you just keep them stocked up on ammo and boom, all good.
Yeah, they can bring anything down.
Aurora handgunner unit. It's basically the same as the regular one, except for it's good in melee. Not that good. And it's more of just an anti-large good.
Does it have anti-large?
Yes, 13 anti-large.
As well as literally with.
Yeah, they have bayonets, but they basically have bayonets. They fix bayonets and they're going in now.
All right, fair enough. And they have increased missile strength too.
Yeah, with a typical chevroning buff as well. Yeah. They also have charge defense against large. Basically, these are things that can actually like handle a large unit. I wouldn't say they'd win, but they do some fairly decent damage.
Especially the armor piercing part, because it makes it so that like the heavy cav that runs in will be like, yeah, it'll kill some of it, but if they stay in combat, they'll lose way too much health to make it worth it.
Yeah, I'd say depending on the situation, you might bring one of these over the regular handgun unit.
Just to have it near your other handgunners, because you can just run it in and start murdering it.
Well, just put it on, like, having it on a flank side, it doesn't really, it kind of wants to be charged because of that charge defense, and typically, I don't think many people actually, like, look into the black spot and think, because they see, oh, gun symbol, it's a missile unit, I'll charge it head on. Who cares about it? It doesn't have charge defense, right? It's not anti-large, and then it turns out it is.
That's the most important thing, is that they brace and they take no damage, and then they start killing your cavalry, and it's like, wait, what?
Yeah. They're not going to win too many fights. They might win against Knight Errant, but that's about as far as I'd go.
Yeah. but they'll badly bloody a lot of
Yeah,
other
they'll definitely do a fair
cavalry
amount of
because
damage.
Armor piercing, anti-large. How much is the anti-large bonus?
16, I think.
16.
13.
That's pretty good. 13. That's still pretty good.
Yeah, still 33 melee attack on a ranged unit. Pretty good, especially with that. But well, actually, no, they had left models now. It used to have 120 models, so they used to be a lot better.
Oh god, yeah, that's ugh.
Well, good
That
times.
was the time when Willow was still playing codes.
Yeah, old days.
Villa
Classic.
doesn't play them anymore because they're not.
Anyway, moving on. Shade Race Gunners. They're in a serial deck gunner unit. They lose out some of their missile strength, unfortunately, but it's replaced their. Actually, yeah, I think they lose their shield breaker, but their missiles are no longer counted as like guns. Basically, they don't get blocked by shields. Yeah, and I don't think their rounds get blocked by shields anymore. Anyway, the ghost versions, they fire they actually have like an explosive effect to their ranged attacks. I think. No, maybe they don't.
We'll have to test that.
We'll have to test that at some point. But yeah, they get their 75% physical resistance, which makes them a lot harder to snipe. They have the discourage effect, of course, which works pretty well against most stuff because you can actually stack a lot of like discourage effects. You're already getting like the fear and like terror from other units, so you can make things rout really quickly. And if things are routing, it means they're going to get shot in the back more, which works out very nicely.
Yeah.
These are also again a good source of like magic damage. Although if you're firing, you have to worry about ethereal units because ethereal units will destroy these things. So it's like a bit of a trade-off there.
Any magic will
destroy them because they have only 2,000 health.
There's it's not even 2,000 health.
Not even 2,000.
Yeah. They're have
very vulnerable.
83 health per model. Yeah.
They're very vulnerable. But they are very good to getting healed. Like, you can drop these things down to like 5 health. A single invocation will get them back up to full, I think.
Yeah.
They're very good target to heal.
1,000 and 20,
yeah. So yeah, if they get to half, they can... Yeah, half. It's about half the health.
Sanchez went this whole time without a wrong stream title.
Oh, wait, it was my stream a different time. Oh, my stream is a different title.
God,
none of you said this. None of you said anything. I can't bring it up now either.
Well,
so.
I was gonna bring it up, but nah.
Oh well, too late now.
Yeah, I didn't want to break your rhythm. You know?
Oh well. So yeah, Shade Wraith Gunners, Discourage Effect, Magical Ammunition, Ethereal makes them harder to snipe. Pretty good. I'd recommend bringing them as like switching out one of the deck gunners for them all the time.
Yeah. You could probably, if you're bringing deck gunners, you could probably always bring one.
Yeah, you can always certainly switch one of them out.
It's one of the few things that are magic damage. Well, you goddamn goof, he says.
I'm such a goof. Such a goof. Sorry.
But yeah, because isn't the Shade Wraith Gunners also one of the few magic damage?
Yeah, sources. Yeah. Although they're not exactly going to do a lot of melee magic damage, mostly in their ranged attacks.
Yeah, I mean, in the ranged.
Monsters and beasts. Fellbats. Yeah, they're Fellbats. They don't quite suit the Vampire Coast style of play, unfortunately. In a Vampire Camp roster, they're amazing because they're very much a rush focused thing, but they're not so much so in the Vampire Coast roster.
I could see Fellbats as something to tie up air units before they can reach your gunners and kind of hold them in place.
Yeah.
That's the only way I could see them useful. Like, you'd bring maybe one unit, and then if they try and fly something close, you throw them in, catch them, and then tie them up while you start shooting. Because you don't care if you hit your own Fellbats. You just care if you hit the target.
You just care. That's all you care about. So they're a good sort of tie-up thing. Again, like some dropping a zombie summon or something.
Yeah.
That's basically it. Typical Fellbat.
And also the chattest of all units.
Animated Hulks. Bloated Corpse even, sorry.
Yes.
It's a bloated corpse. These guys explode.
They explode and take everything out and cause terror, apparently.
Oh yeah, so they do.
So
never noticed that. They're...
when you wipe out an entire unit of Empire Knights...
Yeah, it's basically like...
Good, man.
It's one of those risk units again. Like, if you're not getting your money worth, then you've wasted it. And they're quite easy to counter. Like, all that you need to do is charge a single entity into it, and it's completely wasted.
Yeah.
So it's a real risky move, but if it pays off, it's a good meme.
Let's be real, Willow. It's a flex unit.
Yeah, it's a flex unit.
Flex on people.
That's a good meme. It's a good meme, that's for sure.
Yeah. If you're able to like wipe out a unit of cavalry or elite infantry with a bloated corpse, yeah, the person who just got their unit wiped out should feel bad.
They should feel bad about it. Absolutely.
Yeah. I saw right away and was hoping someone would notice. I did notice, but I didn't want to break Willow's with them.
Yeah, sorry.
Break
yeah,
why are you even here?
Not even existing. Scurvy Dogs. Typical Hound unit. Pretty much the exact same, I think, as any Hound unit.
Yep.
Good for running off units, which is when you've got all these leadership debuffs that the Vampire Coast have. Pretty good.
And they can pull through pretty much everything because they're undead.
Yeah.
Without breaking.
They can also pretty good thing to go after archers with. So always nice to have hidden away in the tree line, waiting for those archers to get into like a dangerous position and then going after them.
Yep.
Animated Hulk's terrible. Don't bring him. Oh, we've got a defense, have you? Go ahead.
I don't know.
No,
like,
say well, they're good. Go on.
The fucking 40. Wait, 35 armor.
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck even is that thing? So they have 110 damage. Their melee defense is garbage. Their melee attack isn't that great. What is it supposed to be for? Holding people still, killing infantry?
Well, not with 24 melee defense, I think.
Like it, like if it had any, because okay, let's go to Chaos Spawn for a second, because that's the closest unit we're going to be comparing it to, because it moves at 42 speed, and I think Chaos Spawn move at like 50 or 48.
There's a stat difference.
Yeah, there's, yeah. So they're legit just worse, or they're apparently better. I don't know. I can't remember.
Comparing Chaos Spawn to
they're worse in every way, but they're also cheaper than Chaos Spawn, I think, by like.
Yeah, by 150, I think.
Yeah, by 150.
40 leadership means they're going to start crumbling real soon.
Yeah, they crumble really quickly. They have low armor. Either way, they have only slightly more health. So the only the main purpose for them technically is for the same as the Chaos Spawn for Chaos, which is to throw them into the front line and just rip apart like any unit that it runs in contact with. But it's armor piercing. It's like that's neat if it has good AOE damage.
Yeah, or good like melee stats in the slightest.
Yeah, because it has worse melee stats across the board. I didn't even know a unit could have shittier melee stats than the Chaos Spawn.
Yeah, but there it is.
The Chaos Spawn doesn't have great melee stats, but also the Chaos Spawn has Frenzy. I think.
No, does it? No, it doesn't.
Oh,
no, they don't. No, they don't.
No. But either way, it's able to stay in combat. Like, I guess the undead unit is unbreakable.
Yeah, but when they start crumbling, they still sort of take that effect. Not to mention that these really don't fit in with the Vampire Coast style of play again. They're very much a rush unit.
Like it doesn't. Like if you wanted to try and do a rush build, I guess, like with Morghuls, and you wanted something to soak up damage for the Morghuls, like it's a cheap unit to bring with Morghuls or other units.
Yeah,
but yeah, it does armor piercing.
Not great overall, sadly.
Yeah, you can't even say situational, because the only situation you'd use it in is if you're building a completely offset army that they can't possibly expect.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that great for what it does. Because I don't think I've ever seen animated Hulks used a lot, except like, and since I don't really bring
campaign.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's nice, isn't it? Good for you, Lycus. Anyway, let's get rid of these. Mongols.
Yeah. Mongols, the good unit.
They're better anime Hulks because they actually have a purpose in the fact they're like a flanking unit,
and have anti-infantry.
Yeah, 20 anti-infantry. And the Hunger. And Vanguard deployment. And Stalk.
You could, yeah, it's like,
and 30% missile resistance.
Yeah,
and more leadership. And more speed. And actually a decent charge bonus.
Yeah, it's like, the weird thing is that it's like you could bring anime Hulks, or you could bring this other unit that's 250 gold more, but significantly better in every regard. Like, in every way.
They have less health, but when you've got that extra missile resistance and everything,
and
more models,
and stock.
This can count. Yeah,
same,
both 12, okay. Same model
yeah,
count, but that's the only thing they are like not at least superior.
Like, it's why do the animated Hulks exist? They're so shit.
They are.
If they had any infantry bonus or something,
or just anything special, but they don't. They have anything.
They are basically the same as crabs, but they're worse because crabs actually
have decent stats.
Actually have armor.
So like Mongols are basically your infantry killing tool. I think rush builds sometimes use them against.
Yes.
Wolves, was it? Sometimes
there's a couple. Sometimes you can mix them in against wolves. You can have them function as sort of like a support to your front line in a rush build, or you can sometimes you can use them as like a backline support thing because they're pretty fast. Like crabs are nice and everything, but they're not usually fast enough as a backline support unit. So Mongols can surprisingly work quite well in the backline because they actually beat like Cav despite being an anti-infantry thing.
Yeah. because again, armor piercing and 100 damage per swing.
Also, they have the hunger, so they'll naturally regenerate as long as they're in melee.
Yeah, unlike animated Hulks. Like, I guess like if animated Hulks actually did have the hunger,
If they had regen. It makes sense for maybe them to feel like mutants or something.
Regen. Yeah, if they had just basic regeneration, I feel like that would work better.
Do you know what we need? We need a Vampire Coast DLC. That's what we need next, CA. Forget about the Beastmen. Can I get Beastmen versus Vampire Coast?
Then you can actually play them again if they're.
Yeah. Also, we can get the Skaven Lord in and give them just ales and give him a Brood Horror as well while you're at it. An undead Brood Horror.
An undead Brood Horror.
Boy, that would be lovely.
The undead Skaven Coast. Lord.
Undead Skaven slaves.
Yeah.
There is an undead Skaven in the original.
Yeah,
game,
there is. Yeah. There's a pirate one.
Dreadfleet?
Yeah, the pirate one. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I want those Skaven.
That's what I want as well. No, but there'll be a Vampire Coast faction. There won't be a Skaven faction.
Yeah.
So you'll have to play Vampire Coast. Anyway, Rotting Prometheans crabs, pretty good. Like they're actually good. Like 50 extra than the Mongols, but they have 48 melee defense, 120 armor. Their weapon strength leaves something to be desired, but they're very much a holding unit. Like they'll last a long time compared to everything else in the roster.
They're better at dealing with like single targets as well, because they don't seem to do a lot of like AOE damage from what I remember.
No, I don't think so. I think they've got more focused.
They don't deal with hordes of infantry very well, but they deal with
with their armor. They last long enough, so they'll be fun. They just don't have a very good damage output when it comes to that situation. But yeah, they're very much a very good holding unit. They block a cav charge amazingly well. They can fend off infantry for like the entire fight. They're not going to do a huge amount of damage anytime soon, but they have such a good holding potential that they'll whittle down an enemy faster than they'll get whittled down themselves.
Because surprisingly, they have good melee stats.
Yeah, for a crab. And also, you can just heal them afterwards as well.
Yeah.
And so for the stats wise, they're like pretty cheap. Like 1,050 for this sort of like 120 armor. This sort of like melee line, it's pretty good.
Yeah. There's a reason why people bring it.
Yeah.
Pretty much every single build.
Yeah, they work really well on the backline support.
Sorry, if you remember, if you talked about Treekin, they're basically like better Treekin.
Yeah, in every way. In fact, let's compare them to Treekin. Let's have a look. Okay. First of all, let's consider the fact that you can resurrect the models of Prometheans. And now let's compare. So, looking at Treekin, and then looking towards Rotting Prometheans. Yeah, they have less health, but when you have an extra 30 armor and 12 melee defense. There's only 2 melee defense. They have way more attack though, so where Treekin will do literally nothing, Rotting Prometheans will do a fair amount of damage.
Well, also aren't Treekin also like 150 gold less too?
Yeah, 150 gold left, so that is to be considered. Yeah. But the fact that the healing potential is probably enough just to swing them in their favour as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty good backline support unit. The Night Terrors, ROR Mongol unit that causes terror, has just a huge stat increase across the board, and also has terror. You'll notice it's a huge amount of stat increase. It's because the trade-off is being that they come with Rampage as well. Yeah. So it's when they when they reach 80% basic Rampage?
Yeah, it's 80%, 50%, and those are the 2 points at Rampage.
Rampage is at
25%. But Rampage is at certain health points.
Yeah, really good melee. Like they have 20 bonus versus infantry, so they get to 72 melee attack. Plus the terror basically means any single like infantry unit will probably terror out as soon as they engage them, because they'll take so much damage on the charge. They'll take like another huge amount of damage after 10 seconds, and then they'll terror out because of the leadership penalties. So they work really well as like a backline running through unit, or just like not your own backline, but like the enemy backline, because they have Stalk and Vanguard as well. You can just sneak them around the place, and then get into enemy archers. That is their ideal situation. Although they do only have 30 armor, so pretty weak to those like cavalry and archers and such.
Yeah, if you can catch an opponent off guard with like them with the Night Terrors and like a unit of Mongols to support it, you could probably just clear out any archers in the back and any defensive units that would protect them. Mm-hmm. Because even like basic spears would just get overrun by them. Get
destroyed immediately. Yeah.
Because they have so much.
It would take like advanced like spearman units, like maybe Eternal Guard would win, barely.
Eternal Guard, maybe Halberds, maybe.
You need like full like Phoenix Guard or something to beat them probably. Yeah. They're ideal at murdering infantry.
It's one of the scenarios where you're paying the extra money so you can pretty much ball over the melee.
Yeah, I think
like the base spearman.
The terror is worth it, and it's only 200 extra, and just the terror alone is worth it, frankly. So.
Yeah, like you could probably bring it plus one Mongol as like a little squad to roll up behind the enemy force.
Yeah, if you bring in a Mongol,
engage
you can just bring like you bring these Knight Terrors instead. I think, frankly, just bring
Like,
in one of
They
them.
also work very well with hounds together.
Yeah,
because
very well.
hounds base the shit off that is terror routed.
And not to mention that you can run them with the hounds. Your opponent thinks they're easy pickings to hounds, and these will be stalked nearby so that they can just like support.
Yeah.
They work very well in tandem. Pretty much always want to pair them.
Especially skirmishers.
Yeah, especially skirmishers. The Necrofex Colossus.
Yes.
It is your typical missile monster. Pretty good at like its main focus is in like single entities and killing single entities and like cavalry. I say cavalry is probably its main target. Heavy cavalry.
That's a lot of missile strength.
Yeah, bear in mind that it's because it fires basically fires three cannonballs. Its accuracy of those is variable. Yeah, more or less.
Which
Oh no, it's four. It's four cannonballs.
Yeah. So 150 per shot.
137. Well, yeah, 106. No, 170 per shot. I think.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, very good at clearing out like hordes of cavalry.
Yeah,
pretty good against like if you get a good lineup on it, it could do very well against like any large unit, anything. I don't think there's anything bad you can shoot. It fires so many projectiles that it's alright against infantry, and it fires cannonballs, so it's good against large units as well.
And don't forget, guys, the 30%.
Yeah, the extra 30% damage as well that comes with extra powder.
Now we come into the territory which actually matters. That
yeah,
30%.
because this is a huge buff.
189 extra damage, so like 800 damage a shot.
Yeah, really good. And you're keeping that stocked up with like a gunnery white?
Gunnery white.
Yeah, push that up even further with the gunnery white.
Also, for a missile monster, its stats aren't terrible. 42 melee attack and then 412 weapon strength with armor piercing. That's pretty good, all things considered. So even if, on the off chance you run out of ammo, it's still doing fairly well in melee.
I've had run into a scenario where cosplayers are doing like a Noctilus on the big
yeah, on his thing, on his
with
Necrofex.
the second Necrofex, but I just happened to bring Archaon with an Exalted Huron horses
that'll whack him.
Beat the shit out of him.
Another thing to point out with the Necrofex Colossus and also Noctilus and Necrofex Colossus, if they go under 50% health, they spawn a unit of zombie deckhand mobs.
Yeah, it's only a smaller unit. I think it's like a
advantage.
Yeah, it's like a smaller I don't know how many entities it is, but it's a smaller entity unit. I think it's a 19 model entity unit.
It's not that like it's just you have some kind of.
It's some chaff to put you between and the enemy where you can heal and such. Not to mention, of course, Fear and Terror as well. Also, you can sometimes get some really good missile shots off because sometimes it has to go through a full animation, and sometimes it just turns and fires immediately. So if this thing can be in melee, and in 2 seconds it can fire a shell off at a dragon like 2 miles away, without any wind up or anything. So if you want to set it to defensive mode when it's fighting when it's like in the middle of infantry, and you can just tell it to fire anything. It doesn't really care. It takes like 3 seconds sometimes to fire, which can really catch people off guard. When you're getting hit with like 4 projectiles at once.
Get shredded.
The Gallows Giant is basically a flame. You replace the cannons with a flamethrower.
Flamethrower with a Flammenwerfer.
Which you could argue that's whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing. It means it comes with
it's a bad thing.
Yeah, it's a bad thing. Yeah, you're right.
It reduces the range by like a ton. And burnt is neat and everything, but also it makes his melee attacks. Like the only thing that would make it probably better is the fact that it has better melee stats for 100. It's 100 gold more for way better melee stats and discourage and fire damage on its melee attacks.
25 bonus versus infantry as well.
Yeah,
I think it's fun to use it against Northgird, but like it's not really meta or worth it.
I think it's good against counts.
Yeah, because they won't have really the tools to deal with it. If you toss it in the middle of a infantry fight, you will win. It will win.
It will win, and counts kind of struggle to deal with it because usually when you got the box formation, this thing is in the center of your box, so the blood knights aren't getting anywhere near it.
And if you're in an infantry blob, the knights can't get to it anyways.
Not to mention, despite it being a flamethrower, it does a lot of damage to single entities. So if a dragon or a terrorgeist is flying overhead, it can fire at it.
Remember, 30% on 789.
I feel like it mostly does like bad damage against infantry actually, because the flamethrower is kind of wonky and
the flamethrower, it depends on what sort of angle you're firing at. Like if you're firing at a nice angle, you can get a really good angle for it, but it's like quite specific. But thing is, you have... I've never seen this thing run out of ammo before. I don't think it uses up ammo as quickly as it says it does. It has basically infinite ammo. It's not running out anytime soon.
But I'd say if you're going to bring the Gallows Giant, you're using it to be a part of like a big infantry front blob. Like you'd send it in with your deckhand mobs, and then you could pretty much break whatever it's fighting because it's got so much melee stats.
It's got some really decent... I think, yeah, just basically against count, it performs really well.
Yeah.
More or less.
Or if you're against an opponent that you know won't bring as much missiles to bring it down.
Let me look at other factions. Is there anything else that'd be good at? Maybe greenskins? Assuming you deal with the archers, then yeah, maybe greenskins.
But you can also have Noctilus for that already.
Yeah.
Maybe. I could see it maybe being good against
allowed to bring one.
But that's about it, probably. Yeah, greenskins and count are the only times I consider it.
You could bring Noctilus on foot as well, though, and then have that just wading through in the battle.
Yeah, because...
And then you could use it. You could use it to help Noctilus too. So.
Moving on to another anti-infantry monster, the Rotting Leviathan. It's a giant crab.
Yeah. It eats people.
Crab.
It's got 150 armor. It's got... Yeah. It's anti-infantry. It's basically another anti-infantry killing monster, except for it's not got a flamethrower this time.
It's got armor.
Yeah, it's got a huge amount of armor.
It's got Bill hanging off the side.
Yeah,
like,
firing off the occasional shot.
Wood.
Popping shots off at random pedestrians.
Yeah, hey, we're not here.
Yeah, so it's compared to the Gallows Giant, I think you're only really paying for the armor there. Like damage potential is so much better on the Gallows Giant that you're really just focused on that 150. I mean, 150 armor is a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot, but also getting discouraged as well is really strong.
Yeah,
because remember, every unit, like if he hits a unit, the entire unit gets discouraged.
We should also be talking about like how Solostra can also be put on one of these things, so similar to how Necrofex and then Noctilus.
And that.
Yeah, I think
Rotting Leviathans and then watch like Empire players cry because they can't deal with that.
I mean, surprisingly, I think this is really good against High Elves actually. Assuming the High Elf player doesn't bring Sisters of Avalon, they can't really deal with these things.
What if you brought Solostra on the crab and then with the Gallows Giant along with it?
I think you just bring 2 crabs. Why not? I think isn't 2 Rotting Leviathans allowed?
I think 2 Rotting Leviathans, like it used to be allowed. I think it's banned now.
Ah, boo.
Because every single person would bring it because it was just that good.
I think
it was meta in China, and then like Turin hosted one Chinese YouTuber in on one of his tournaments. And then I think everybody started to use it. I have to check with banner rules, but I think it's banned now.
The thing is because like the typical counter to Vampire Coast is like lots of cheap archers because they have nothing else to deal with it. But you'll notice that these are 150 armor, so all those cheap archers really don't do much to these things. So which makes them a real oddball to fall into things. It's the same thing runs with regular Rotting Prometheans, is because they have so much armor. It's not something you normally expect to deal with Vampire Coast. So sometimes they just don't have anything to deal with it with, which is why crabs have that useless.
Is to shoot everything else and then deal with the monster.
Yeah, deal with the crabs last.
Yeah. Because especially if it's like a scenario with Bretonia, you want your archers to kill everything inside, and then you bring your knights in to finish the job.
Yeah. But yeah, giant crab, really armored, good against like all those cheap archers that you expect to see against Coast. Unfortunately, they don't have the speed to catch it.
Still allowed to bring 2 Rotting.
I thought so.
Rotting Leviathans.
Otherwise, I would have been breaking banner rules. Because I'm pretty sure I brought them in the championship, guys. Don't. I would be breaking banner rules again in that tournament because I brought them against Beastmen, didn't I?
Anyway,
no, it was the one I won against Beastmen. Remember? Because who was playing Beastmen? I can't remember. I brought them a Beastmen now, and I won.
But Rotting Leviathan, because that's what I was asking. It's like, can you bring a Necrofex and a Rotting Leviathan, or is that not allowed?
Yes, you can.
I'd imagine.
That's what I was suggesting. Is you could bring Sleostra on the crab with the Gallows Giant.
I think the crab just gets in the way though.
Yeah,
in terms of its range fire.
It would be really funny. It's like kills your own lord.
Yeah, it is very anti-infantry focused. So
you can't even trust don't trust anyone, not even yourself.
Yeah. It should be noted that there's moving on to the last one, the Depth Streak Terrorgeist. There is not really any anti-large focused monster in the roster, apart from unless you count the Necrofex as one with its missile attacks. Because for some reason, the Depth Streak Terrorgeist does not have anti-large, unlike the regular Terrorgeist. In fact,
it's a Death Streak and not a
Depth Streak. What is the difference here? Is it literally just the anti-large effect?
It's just the anti-large bonus and it has better stats. Like the Death
Oh
Streak
yeah,
Terrorgeist
this one has 40 more, so it's and 2 more melee attack. But seeing as that's like 25 bonus versus large, you're losing. You're losing 25 bonus to basically losing 23 melee attack against large entities, which is pretty bad. Although you still get the Depth Streak breath.
You still get the breath attack, so.
Yeah, I think the breath attack is slightly different. So.
Is it?
I think Zerk said it in his video. I think it's different.
Yeah.
Have to check, but.
Death Streak.
Also.
Death Streak.
It's the same.
I think it's
Death Streak.
The icons are both the same.
Death Streak. No, I'm pretty sure it's the same. But frankly, you're only bringing this thing when you're bringing Luther Harkin on his.
Because you need something to protect him.
Yeah. That's basically it.
I saw this in one video, like in one game where somebody brought 2 Death Streak Terrorgeist and they lost. So
They
I think we cover that replay.
Yeah,
we covered that one. Yeah. It didn't work too well. I mean, that's mainly because he didn't make full use of the breath attacks, I think.
He never used any breath attacks. He didn't like pull the other one out and start breath attacking the Lord. He had also gunnery whites sitting shooting it, and it's like there's a lot more the cosplayer could have done, or just turned all of his guns and just shot the shit out of his Lord while he was over his army. Instead, just sat and shooting zombies.
You know what? I might give these a go. You know, I think there's maybe something to. I'll fiddle around with them, but frankly, I think you're just bringing Luther on one 90% of the time. Maybe if you're not bringing Luther, if you're bringing Noctis, I could argue there's probably space for one.
Yeah, or
in some situations.
What about Luther plus an extra one?
Go crazy. You just go big spender. How many can I bring? I can only bring 2 though. Oh, sad.
Yeah, that's. Yeah.
I want to bring 3.
I want to bring 3.
Yeah, but like I said, like Death Streak Terrorgeist is the closest thing you're going to get to an anti-large monster in your roster, so it has that role to fill. Missile monsters and beasts, Death Droppers, Death Dropper Bombers, Death Dropper Handgunners. Basically very similar to Gyrocopters. If there's nothing to deal with them, they get their value back very quickly. If there is something to deal with them, they die immediately.
Literally any faction
Actually,
with any range.
like Death Droppers are now the centerpiece of most coast builds, Willow.
Yeah. They just spam the shit.
Oh yeah, because of the change the missile.
Spam like 3, or you bring like 3 normal and then 2 handguns, and that usually if your micros on top and if you heal them, you deal with actually skirmish cav. You route them off and you chase them off, and you kill them together with the 2 gunnery whites, and then maybe like Noctilus on his big thing. Like that's the thing how you play Vampire Coast.
Because when they altered the missile infantry, they didn't alter the Death Dropper model count or damage output in any way, so they remained the exact same as they were before. Which they weren't used before because the basic versions were already that good, but because they remained unchanged, they're
everyone
the
has
same
just
level.
Shifted to the
Using
other
these.
unit that has because
it's
they
absolutely annoying to fight against. Always.
Because they also have way further range than most skirmish cav that can actually kill them.
Yeah, the handgunner unit does. Yeah. Although let it be known, the bombers are pretty bad. Bombers are only really good against like greenskins. That's been it.
Because they're low armor.
They don't have the same sort of volume of fire as the infantry version does to really make up for it.
Yeah.
But they trade fighting well against archers.
You need to dodge the shit out of Death Droppers, but if you
if you have the micro for it,
basically
it's optimal.
Yeah, you use the extra powder from the gunnery whites to fill this, the powder back up, 30% missile strength plus missile. Remember that, and then you just snipe your opponent's important targets.
So you're doing over 50 damage. You're doing 50 damage every shot because of the extra like 11, 12 damage you get from extra powder. And it's
awful to play against all with.
And if the scenario they do run out of ammo, they're bats. You can just use them to run something off.
Yeah, like the main. Actually, I guess what I would usually bring would still work sort of fine because it entirely relied on just running the enemy army down so quickly that they can't do enough damage.
Yeah, but if you're on a way, then like if the coast player is good, he will move away slightly or slowly, and all the while shooting you. So it's difficult to.
Well, Forsaken still move at 48 speed. They will catch you.
Yeah, but Forsaken Hunter gotta kill the gunnery wights or Noctilus, so...
Yeah, but that's what Archaon's for. Just throw fireballs at them.
Looking at the interesting unit here, deck dropper bombers, Salt Lord Scuttlers. Yeah, they're terrible.
What do they even do? Armor sundering?
They're in, yeah, they're armor sundering. And they're armor piercing.
Cool.
Okay. I guess you could mix it with handgunners, right, guys? Ooh, big value.
Oh, but wait, handgunners already do armor piercing, so it's yeah, they're not good.
I mean the basic ones.
The basic gunnery mob.
Yeah, gunnery mob.
Yeah, they're not good. Rotting Prometheans with gunnery mobs. They are literally Rotting Prometheans, but they stuck some people with guns on top.
Yeah.
I don't believe that does a huge amount, but it does do something.
They snatched up one of Ted's peasants and put him on the
and
side
they gave him a hand cannon.
Yeah.
I've
never seen one of these before.
Not particularly worth it, as opposed to Rotting Prometheans. It does do an extra bit of damage output, but the damage output is negligible compared to the cost. Like, it's an extra 300 gold for it.
Like,
what is worth it, though, is the Lamprey's Revenge. Because the one reason is that they get regeneration, which is really good for a unit that has 120 armor and 59 melee defense. It means they are going to die very slowly, and then regenerate over time as well. Really good backline unit here. The mass, the melee defense, the shooting, the regeneration. Really strong unit. Even it's worth the extra 550 gold, frankly, over Rotting Prometheans. Like, if you don't have the money, you can scrape by with just regular Rotting Prometheans and then just heal them up. But you usually want to be bringing this one if you're planning to do some crab stuff. Finally, mortars.
Good for archers.
Yeah. This is basically the only counter you have against archers, more or less.
Yeah.
Is mortars.
If you find you have a rash of archers, apply mortar.
Yeah. You think you're going to come like you're looking at Bretonia, you're going to deal with some archers. You bring the mortars. You think you're dealing with high elves, you bring the mortars. Dark elves, mortars. Wood elves, maybe a mortar. Just like those typical lightly armored archer corps that you're probably going to be dealing with Vampire Coast, you bring mortars to counter.
Yeah.
And then carronades.
How did you do a championship? Using 2 dragons seems super micro and opportunity intensive. He lost in the second. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think Willow lost in the second or third round. Willow, was it?
Yeah.
You were a bit unlucky.
I remember
third round,
someone. I think it was during. I can't remember who was against.
Is it the second round? I can't remember.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was second round because I think Alexis lost.
Yeah, it would have been the second one. Yeah.
Alexis lost in the third round. No, actually, I think Alexis just didn't bother playing because it's just everyone was doing super meta stuff and it was just boring.
Oh well. Anyway, we're almost finished, please. Like God, it's going for 3 hours. Carronades, cannons. Yeah, you get extra powder, so they do a lot more damage, but they die a lot quicker. They're like the opposite of dwarf cannons, where dwarf cannons die slowly but don't have that much damage output. These have a lot more damage output, but die really quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Besides that, they're just a typical carronade. Oh look, it's Queen Bess. Think Hell Cannon times like 10. Really good damage output. Can be dodged really easily, but is an amazingly good target for just about everything because it's 1,600 gold and all it takes is like 2 fireballs and it's dead.
It's meta versus dwarfs. Also,
if you can find a hill to put it behind.
Yes, if you're getting fireballed, you can actually like take the crew off and run them away, like they're really slow.
Depends on the map size, but
if it's getting charged in melee, they actually like they hold out pretty well because they have so much bottles.
Yeah, actually, and also each of the models have a ton of health. The actual models have like, it's I think 20 or 20 models with like over 4,000 health, and they all have like around 150.
They're really beefy guys to handle Queen Bess.
Yeah, it's.
But
she's a beefy lady.
Okay, so there's basically 2 conditions to using this thing. First of all, you need a hill to hide it behind. Second of all, you need a gunnery wight to replenish its ammo, and then that's basically it.
It's also hella fun.
Yeah, it's fun when you get the big boom and you kill like a.
I've had a Coast player when I was running my Forsaken up. The Queen Bess round landed dead center because he was using the accuracy thing, and it happened to hit the moving target perfectly.
Ooh, perfect.
And just wiped out 3/4 of the unit in one shot.
Yeah,
you also need a gunnery wight. You need a gunnery wight.
That's what I said. Yeah, you need a gunnery wight to fill up ammo. You need a hill to hide it behind, and you need a gunnery wight.
Increased its accuracy even further.
Yeah, the accuracy also helps because at further ranges it usually misses.
Yeah.
All right then. Well, that is it we're finished with the 2 rosters, the Vampire Coast and the Dwarves. Thank you all for watching. I'm going to end the recording now. Farewell and ta-ta.